Hello and welcome back to the Live Reality Game Podcast. My name is Steven, and it is the season for Reelfoot Deep Dive interviews of Season 12, the Decennium. And joining me today is Melanie. Melanie, how are you doing?
I'm excited to be talking to you, Steven. I've been looking forward to this. As preparation for my Reelfoot experience, I listened to a lot of your past podcasts about Reelfoot, from Fowler's Point and Unfinished Business and various others. So now I'm part of it.
You have no idea how much that warms my heart to hear that is content that keeps on giving. Hopefully you found it helpful.
I did. I should have listened to certain things. Although I listened to how everyone got to talk about what luxury item they got right before the game. I was like, so proud. I haven't heard anything about luxury items. They're like, yeah, that's not happening. I was like, and I did hear people talk about how it was cold at night, but I wasn't sure if the season was at the same time of year. And I was like, it just looks like it's going to be hot, but it was freezing at night, and I should have figured that out. So people, if you're listening to this from the future, gonna play, it was very, very cold at night.
Well, you all had the added joy of having a torrential downpour, day one, night one, and everything being soaked probably through the rest of your experience as a result.
That is true, but it does not make up for the whole thing. I think it was, they talk about like survivalists to not sleep right on the ground, and we had a tarp, but we probably should have put, they talk about Frank moving moss or whatever. We probably should have done something like that. Not that I found any moss, but like the ground was cold, and so that was making us cold even on the days when it wasn't raining. It was
because I brought a sleeping pad for my game, which helped, though I'd still wake up. You've noticed at the time, 3 or 4 a.m. shivering. I'm like, well, that's it. I guess I'm awake now.
Yes, the shivering. Yeah.
And I think my biggest regret was just not bringing a heavier jacket. I had this very light waterproof jacket, which is nice. It was waterproof, but like not insulating.
Yeah, I thought I would be fine. They let us bring like 4 different pairs of shoes and like change of clothes. And I've played other games where you didn't have any, like you didn't have a change of clothes, a change of shoes, a change of socks. So I was like, oh, this will be cushy. But like, no, everything got wet anyway. Everything in my bag got wet. Even though like I saved an extra pair of socks and shoes. And because my bag got wet, it got wet. It was just wet and cold for a few days.
We'll talk about the rain a lot more going into it. So for those who are listening, Melanie and I had the opportunity to play Surviving Bloomington last year, season 6, which you can catch on YouTube. And one of the things that really amazed me is the preparation you went to in advance for Reelfoot. Now, from your intro video, you were initially an alternate for Reelfoot. When did you get the call saying, hey, we'd like you to join the main cast?
I still had several months notice, so it wasn't a last minute situation. It was just enough time for me to be like bummed out. Like I really wanted to play Reelfoot, and I talked about it in my interview. Like I played a lot of games in the past. I played a lot of games last summer. And so like this year I was like, I'm only playing one game. It can't be on the Northeast. I like a long format game. I knew that Reelfoot has both like a long history, but also it's the longest LRG, like 8 days long. I knew that that's the format that I would be into. And also I like the elements aspect of it. I like the being outdoors and like the deprivation game. I'm into that. So I really wanted to play. And so I was disappointed when I was an alternate. And then I was really happy when I ended up getting the call.
So we talked a little bit about, you went back and listened to my past interviews, which again, thank you. Was there anything else you did in advance to prepare for the game?
Well, I definitely, went to the gym, which I go to the gym anyway, but I like did some running, which I wouldn't have otherwise done. I was like, okay, let me do that. And I mean, I watched some of the videos. You had actually made a workbook spreadsheet where you could link to different videos. It was hard for me to just look on the Facebook and find all the videos of past seasons, but you had sent me, you didn't know I was playing. Nobody.
I did not know you were playing. Well, so Melanie reached out and said, hey, is there like some like compendium or like Google spreadsheet of past seasons? Like, yeah, I have several. And I sent them for 9, 10, and maybe 11. No.
And I think at that time I was not I think at that time I was not on the cast, but I was just like, well, I just want to watch some LRGs, so like let me watch Reelfoot. And so I did.
Believed it.
Well, and also I had told several people like that I applied and I was turned down. Like I didn't tell people I was an alternate, but I was like, I applied and I was turned down and I was sad. I know I told you that. I told Casey that. I think I told like some other people that I was like, I didn't tell them when I applied, but after I got turned down, I was just like, oh, I'm like, I don't have any games to play this summer. I feel, but then I felt bad because I was like, I wasn't lying. I felt like I was lying outside of the game. I was like, no. I just didn't tell anyone when things changed. Yeah, so I think I did some physical stuff to work out and to prep, but then most of the prep that I did was really listening to the podcasts. Now, prioritizing the podcasts of people that I knew, but also I listened to almost all the podcasts from Fowler's Point. So
yeah, and this season, in a lot of ways, was similar in style and played out a lot like Bluff Ranch season 9, which was really interesting for me to see in kind of in retrospect.
Like I feel like they blend together in terms of like which for me, I'm like, which ones, which season was that?
The first post-COVID season.
I'm like, was that Justin's season?
Justin's season. Sorry, I should go by the winner. That was the season Justin won.
I'm like, oh, well, I knew from listening to that, like I listened to Justin's podcast. I knew that he was on Redemption or whatever you called it in that season and came back. And I knew that there were 2 people that came back. And so on Redemption, I was telling people like there could be 2 people coming back because they did that in the past. So especially
as you saw like players in the game dwindling, players in the Redemption growing, you're like, oh, this is going to be a small merge, or we're going to have a couple more than one person going back here.
Well, it definitely felt better that they could have had 10 people on Redemption, but it felt better that it was only 7 because 3 people opted to not go to Redemption, which speaks to like the difficulty of the game itself. Because like that was unimaginable to me. There was never a second that I wasn't going to go to Redemption.
Yeah. So season 8, which ran in 2019, it rained for 4 days, and it just like played havoc on the cast. I think you had 2 people step out of the game. You had a person play for medevac. I think being in the rain has made me appreciate how miserable people are in Survivor in the rain, and just how much a toll it plays on you both, like mentally, emotionally, and physically, like all the things.
Well, I was said in my interview too that like I'm ready for the rain. I think the rain gives me an advantage because I have played in hard conditions before. I've played in downpours, competitive events, all-stars, in CYS. And then a survival challenge, I went 2 nights with no tarp. One of the nights it was pouring rain. And like we just sat there in the pouring rain from like 2 a.m. till like it stopped raining at like 5 or 6. So I'm like, I know I've done that before. Jordan, who's also on this cast, she was on the same tribe with me. So we were like in it. I don't think anything will beat that. But at least I knew that was something. And also I played a game where it was so cold that the prod let players sleep in their cars. And I was like, no, I'm going to just stay out here in the cold. So I'm like, I've done it's cold out before. But
do you feel like that was an advantage for you in this game, being like you knew to expect and you knew how to deal with that kind of element play?
Yes and no. I think that my experience, knowing what things were going to be difficult for me, and I think also for other people, having played longer games before, it made it easier for me, but also maybe put me a little bit at odds with some people, not openly, but when we got to camp, people's first reactions was like, okay, we're at camp, we're playing Survivor, like, let's make fire. And they like made fire and eat rice on the first night. Whereas I have like played my survival challenge season, 4 nights, no one in the whole game had a fire. We couldn't have rice because no one could make fire because it was raining. So I knew I played 4 days with no fire, no food. And like, to me, having rice on the first night was like totally unnecessary. And so when people were like, let's go get wood, let's make this fire, in my head, I'm like, some games, if you make a fire, I think in Bloomington, it's like, you have to put it out before you go to the challenge. You can't just like leave your fire unattended. So as people were like, working to make the fire. In my head, I'm like asking Prod, like, are you going to make us put this out if we make this? And like, I didn't want to tell people not to make a fire because they were like all excited about it. But in my head, I'm like, this is like totally unnecessary. But at the same time, I doubted that they would be able to make a fire, and they did. So like, I'm sure I have a confessional where I was like, props to you guys. Like, you made the fire. Prod is letting us leave it. Like, it's fine. You know, people wanted something to do. They made a fire. They had some, you know, a few bites of rice. Like, that's great. But
because I will say, from
you don't need any of this.
From my real experience, like, you get rice, but not like a substantial amount of rice. And when you have 10 people, it does not go far.
Yeah, I mean, to me, food is like the last concern that I have. To me, sleep was the most important, and I knew that. Like, in Angelica, I stayed up all night comforting somebody, and then the next day I could not do like basic math to get myself back into the game. And I was like, sleep, you cannot go 7 days without sleep. So we need a shelter. Like, the tarp was like the only thing that that I was like concerned about. I was trying to get the shelter going, and then I could see that other people were like, oh, let's get wood, and really getting wood. I was like, I'm sus of all of you people getting wood. Like, and so then I just kind of had to let it be. Like, I'm not gonna tell anybody. Like, I didn't tell anybody not to do any of the things that they wanted to do, but in my head I was like, And then I think it came back, like, to skip ahead. One of the things that was said about me as a reason to target me, which ultimately wasn't enough to get me targeted, but like it was like an argument of me not doing enough around camp. But I think I was doing a very normal amount of things around camp, and it was just a different priority level of like what people think somebody should be doing around camp. And I was trying to get like I said, I was trying to get the tarp and the shelter going, but then it seemed like that was not the vibe. And so I was like, well, I'm not gonna make people do things.
If you all want to suffer, I'll just suffer right with you.
In the end, it came together. But I was just like, I'm trying too hard to make to gather people, and I don't want to do that. So I was grateful there a few people were working on it. Charlie, he did the knots. Like, thank you, Charlie.
So stepping back a little bit more pre-game, we talked about a lot of things you had to prepare. Were you coming with any set strategy or anything you wanted to try to do in the game, or just kind of hit the ground and see what happens?
My strategy is always to try to get connections with people, but also specifically make connections across, like, to everyone, like, have questions to bring people together so that we're not just talking about pop culture that like I might not know about. I only in like the game you and I played in Bloomington, like I did that a lot on my starting tribe. I did, and also in like Surviving New York. But in this game I did it less. But I did have some basic level, let's all kind of, get to know each other besides like, what's your job? How old are you? What city are you from? Like, I do like to go beyond that, including like having everybody be able to participate in that kind of conversation. So I knew that I wanted to make connections with people. And I mean, that's the main thing. Like, I want to make connections with people. I want to be open with people. And I wanted to be in the middle in terms of like, I didn't want to stand out. I didn't want to hurt a tribe in a challenge. I wanted to let people know that I was somewhat sporty, but like not the best. I tried to hold back from like talking too much about my past games and experience. It seemed like a lot of people had played a game or two, so that was fine. I didn't talk about all of the games that I've played. But I also knew that there were people there who knew me. So
I want to talk a little bit about like what are some of the conversation starters or kind of topics you bring up to bring out those deeper conversations besides name, age, location, job?
Yeah. Well, everybody has like hopes, like where they want to be. They have past. So I think I maybe asked people like, how has your life changed in the past few years? Like, where do you want to be in 5 years? Talk about your family, like who's important to you in your life, something that you're proud of. Like those are kinds of things that everyone can talk about, something they're proud of. Oh, I know the one that I asked was like, what's something that people wouldn't know about you from just looking at you? So that opens up people's like chance to, come out, or they can, I don't know, talk about like a passion that they have. So I feel like that's a good one to kind of just be like, well, here's something about me that's like beyond. I encourage people to do that in general, to like ask open questions that everyone can participate in. Because I mean, you have me, I'm middle-aged like mother, and we have like, and then we had Charlie who's like 18. Like we have different life experiences, but we all have a past and a future and hopes and passions. So talking about that stuff.
I feel like my challenge is my normal go-to for that. It's like, I do these Survivor games, and then you're in a game. You're like, but all of us do these things. So I guess that's not very unique in this crowd.
But do you have some hopes and dreams, Stephen? Do you have some regrets?
To win a Survivor game someday. There we go. Regrets. All the times I've lost Survivor games. So you walk to, you arrive at Reelfoot. There's some time before the game formally begins.
Yes.
Who are some players you maybe recognize? And you mentioned you and Jordan had played Survival Challenge 2022 2 years ago.
So I got picked up from, I was in Nashville. I got picked up in the hotel. O'Rear was driving. So there was a car with 3 of us in it. I was picked up second, and Jordan was the first one. So I see Jordan, I'm like, hey, what's up? So Jordan and I played on the same tribe. Like we played closely in Survival Challenge. I had done a podcast where I talked about how much I loved her, and like she like voted for me, and I'm like, I don't care. So I know that she knows that I like her. So even if she's like neutral on me, she knows that I'm gonna want to work with her. So she's that felt good. But then we had to keep it secret as we picked up 2 more people. Debbie and Kiri were both in the car with us. So and I could tell that Deb and Kiri knew each other from in the car ride. Like I don't think they knew me and Jordan, but I was able to pick up the vibes from those 2. And yeah, when we arrived, I saw Sandra, who I had played Angelica with, but like I was out early. She made it to the end. So we never actually played together. She was on a different tribe than me. I saw Melissa and Shauna, who I recognized from Survival Challenge this most recent season, but I hadn't met them, but I followed them both on Instagram. I wasn't totally sure if like if I followed them from my personal account or just from the LRG casting account. But Melissa definitely knew who I was. We sort of like, I sort of whispered to her on the couch, like, I know who you are, like, let's, and she was like, yeah, and we have some, similar mindset. And then she's like, we shouldn't be talking about it right now. It's like, okay, noted. But also like I was pretty quiet. So I don't think anyone picked up on it, but I was excited to see her. I knew that she had worked closely with, someone that I know, and it was a good vibes. I recognized Kiri actually in the car, but I couldn't place what game she had played. But I'd actually, I realized that it was Sensation, which she had played just a week before. And I had watched it on Facebook. I knew multiple people who were playing. So I totally recognized her as an LRG player, but I couldn't quite place it. And I also recognized Jeff from watching LRGs. I actually thought maybe I had played a game with Jeff because competitive events, it's like a 1-day game. And I was like, maybe he played that. Maybe I just recognized him from Facebook thinking we should be friends. But then when he told me what games he had played, I was like, oh yeah, I've seen you on the games. That's why. And then, yeah, so, and I was excited to see that Shauna, I knew she had won her game and Sandra had won a game. So I felt like that was maybe good to have other people who had won games.
You mentioned before that, you were open disclosing, like, hey, I've played before, but you're not going to disclose the extent of it. Were you just going to say like, hey, I played Bloomington Survival Challenge, or like?
Well, I mean, certain games that I've played were on YouTube or might be more well-known, whereas other ones are kind of lost to history. So it's I'm like, okay, but then seeing Jordan and Sandra, I feel like they know things about my game. So there's no point in hiding, but no one was really investigating it. But literally before coming to Reelfoot, I'd already played, this is ridiculous and I'm a little embarrassed, but I played 39 days of LRGs before Reelfoot.
But you've essentially played Real Survivor spread out.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, people don't know the extent of it, but also it's hard for me to not like during this podcast, I'm going to reference the other games or different things that happen because it's all like connected to me. Like, it's
And
like
I
you
can see
learn
your
from one.
wonderful wall behind you of all your
Yeah.
buffs.
Well, I have more.
It's a work of art. I love because I've been trying to wonder like what do I do with them? Where do I put them? And I haven't thought of making kind of like a flat, like those pennant flags. It's kind of like that, but buffs.
Yeah. Well, it's special to me because like, yeah, I had them for a long time, just like sitting in a bag in the closet or something. And I'm like, I know some people put like nice frames and stuff, but I like this. And like, I have all my different, like, I have mementos of different like idols or tree mail or like, here's the sock that was burnt on the fire at like, Reelfoot. So it's nice to have a place to put them.
Hopefully the sock got washed before it made it to the wall.
Yes, it did.
So the game begins. You are placed on the Okina tribe. What were your initial thoughts looking at your tribe?
I thought they did a good job of separating me from the people that I knew. So I give them a lot of credit for that. Oh, I did want to say also, coming in, I really thought it was going to be a heroes versus villains theme because Angela had posted on her Instagram like a buff with the villains, like the yeah. But it was like our logo, and I was like, how is she posting this? Like, she's gonna get in trouble. Like, what's going on? So I totally fell for it. I've played 2 hero versus villain games, and I was definitely hero all the time. I was like, okay, well, I guess I'm a hero's tribe. Let's go. So I was like, even after they gave us our buffs, I was like waiting for them to be like, and it's heroes versus villains. I was totally fooled.
I see. I didn't even think about that. Like because that most of those posts were just on the like Surviving Reelfoot alumni page, which is not a public page. So I didn't even think about how future players were reacting like these buffs and like, oh my gosh, I have inside knowledge that won't work.
And it had our logo on it. It wasn't just like a general Reelfoot. It was like Decennium like logo. And I was like, okay, Angela, I guess you're telling us something. So I thought that was funny. I'm like,
so sadly, you're not a hero. You're simply an Okina or Okina. Or
I don't need a theme. That's it's fine. Yeah, I felt fine about it. I felt good.
Do you mind if we kind of walk through your initial tribe? You can just tell me your initial impressions or what you thought or like reactions to them.
Well, what was going on at camp, I would say that like Joe was definitely the most fire oriented and camp life person, putting in a lot of work, focusing on that a lot. Danny was helping her with that. And yeah, and then like I said, Charlie, we're trying to get the shelter. I think Danny and Joe were probably helping on that as well. Ultimately, Joe did a lot with the shelter along with the fire. Joe has 6 kids and like probably runs that household. So I feel like that was part of the vibe. Whereas I'm also a mother, but I'm like, I don't want anyone being like, Mama Melanie, this or that. No. Even like at Redemption, when there were 2 other moms who were like, it was Joe and Debbie were like calling their children. I'm like, no, my daughter is not going to even want, like, she doesn't need to know. She wouldn't even answer the phone. Like, but they were very, like Joe was very much like, trying to like the way that I understood it later after, she saw her way of like taking care of the tribe was to like do all that camp life stuff. And I mean, I can say more about different things, but it's really like there wasn't a lot of game talk in the very beginning from what I could tell. But also I think it had to do with the layout of our camp and also maybe the weather and stuff. But like it felt like we were all sort of had to be in the one place. There weren't really stumps or other things. Ultimately we found I found a place where we could sit, which was like a downed tree off to the side. We called it the living room. So it was like you could sit on that tree, which was like down the way from where the fire and the tarp the shelter was, but
Mm-hmm.
that was like really it. There was like a hill where you could have potentially gone further, but it was so muddy in the beginning that it was just like really obvious. Like, why are you going down that hill? Like it seems treacherous. So I feel like I know on the cast assessment, they talked about our tribe as being like sort of kumbaya. I feel like part of it was, I don't know what the other camp was like, but I feel like there wasn't a lot of places to go or places to sit or be. It was also like you could see who was at the living room when you were sitting at the shelter. Like there just wasn't a lot of like places to go have little side conversations unless you were like looking for wood, which is like also where the snakes live. So like, I don't know. And also to me, it just seemed unnecessary. But I mean, obviously we were good. Everyone was happy and good. I feel like in the first I haven't heard other people talking about it, but on the first day, I would say that day or two, German, I feel like was like lower energy and like was taking naps and like, I feel like, I mean, I feel like Joe was going to be probably the first one out in any scenario, but I feel like German could have been the second out. And at a certain point, he like turned it on. And then it was like, oh, he must be feeling better. I think he was not feeling well at the beginning. Cause like he really just like, even like when I was doing the group conversations, I would have to be like, and what about you, German? And he would like, you know, whereas later on, I think that was not the case. I think he was fatigued or not feeling well or something in the beginning because he did really turn it up later on. But in the beginning, he was a name that people had said. But mostly just because they didn't contribute as much socially, but he turned it on later, which is fine.
In that first day, was there anyone you felt like you were connecting with better?
I mean, I will say that it was really that night. It was really the night. Like, so I don't know if we could just skip ahead to the night, but
you can always go back later. So go for it.
For me, so there was a big thunderstorm, right? Like an intense thunderstorm. The other tribe, they had the lightning hit a tree. We hear it over the walkie-talkie. We're like, what? Like, is that real? There was a little bit of skepticism, but we're like, okay. It was a very intense thunderstorm. The lights, it almost looked like when the whole sky would light up and then it was dark and you'd be like, oh, it's like the power went out because all the rest of the time there was lights going on constantly. So at a certain point in time, Prod comes to us and basically offers for us to leave, that the other tribe is going to sleep on the porch and we could also go sleep on the porch if we wanted. And I was like, I want to just stay here. First of all, I don't want to go out in the rain. It's like downpouring and you want me to like go walk to like, you know, I mean, I guess they've got it picked up somewhere, but to me, it was like, okay, you want us to walk like 15 minutes in the pouring rain in the dark to like go sleep on a porch. It doesn't sound that appealing to me. Right. But also low-key, I was kind of happy that some people decided to go because our tarp was not big enough for like 10 people. I mean, ultimately the next day we made it sort of work, but like, it was just not that large of a tarp, and we had a tarp under us and we had a tarp over us, but like 5 people stayed. That it was much better tarp situation for 5 people than for 10 people. And so for me, I wanted to work with the 5 people that stayed, with like me and the other 4 people. And it already seemed like probably Joe was going to be the one to go first anyway, and she was not there. So it was like, well, if we just all like vote for Joe to go and then we have our 5, like that seems good to me. So that's that was Tony, Melissa, me, Trinica, and Ethan. All people that I was already feeling good about and excited to work with. Melissa, I knew that I wanted to work with. Tony, I don't remember when Tony and I had our first sort of like heart to heart, but Tony became my number one pretty early on. I think it really was when he started, like when I, you know, was asking some of the big questions. I realized that him and I had some connections around like relationships, and then we sat and talked a little bit more about it. But then that night, like I said, I've played a lot of allergies. I've done overnight allergies. I've done like, you know, nights when it wasn't that, you know, the elements were a factor. I would say that this night was right up there with the night when I had no tarp at all. And it rained. Like, because we were all like spooning and like snuggling as much as possible and also still shaking. Like, and not sleeping and just being like, we are now shaking in each other's arms. And I feel like just the like humanity of like, I feel like, you know, like here's Tony keeping me alive. It's like part of the experience. But also I think it says something about all of us that stayed, like, oh, we're all here for the experience. We are willing to push ourselves. Like, we're not afraid of like what this game is going to bring us. So on that night, there was like a very brief, like, oh, well, final five. And like, I think it wasn't like so real to them. And obviously it wasn't because I was targeted ultimately. But I think that that was really who I wanted to work with in reality. And also why I felt like, okay, I had heard other names. Like I had heard Joe, and well, I don't know when I first heard them, but like also I feel like Charlie or German, all of them like could have been names that I would have gone with. And I feel like the five that I had from that night, like was not in the mix. So ultimately there was an alliance made at some point on this camp that I'm not sure when it happened. They called it, I found out later, the Sexy Six. And I was like in the chat, like, are you kidding me? You have like a group called the Sexy Six and you don't include me. Do you not see me? I was like, here's my pole dancing video. They had to like lock out my ass in the picture. Okay. Like, but what are you gonna do? Like, a lot of sexy people on our tribe, I guess. Like, you know. Yeah, so those are the people that I was hoping to work with. Ultimately, Tony was my number one, and I told him that I think like the next morning or at some point I had told him like, listen, I don't know whether it's just our heart to heart we had, whether it was just the me clinging to you during I was on the end, so I was like extra cold. It was like, oh god. But I told him that he was my number one, just like figured that would help if I didn't have to keep it a secret from him. And yeah, I also had great conversation with Melissa. It was very clear early on, like as was discussed in the cast assessment podcast, which I recommend to everyone if they haven't listened to it. It was very clear to me that Melissa had a lot of power in the tribe. It would make sense that maybe she didn't know how much power, but I could tell from talking to people that everyone wanted to work with her. I also wanted to work with her. I think Ethan and I had some little side conversation where we're like, yeah, Melissa has a lot of power here. Like, sort of like planting the seed, like eventually we'll have to deal with that. But like, we're feeling good about Melissa. She's kind of awesome. So that was, but I didn't think that I was like Melissa's number one. I could, I feel like I had a fairly solid read of that stuff. I could also tell like I said, initially German's name had been sort of low key floated as like a possibility of being an early boot. And then his name was not in contention. And I could tell that like, this must be Hannah protecting him really strong. So then I could tell that Hannah was a very powerful player as well. And then I was like very clear to me. I don't know to everybody else, but I was like, somebody is doing this to like save German, who like didn't, talk to us. And now someone's very passionately making sure it's not him. So, yeah.
So going back a bit on day one, I want to talk about a couple of the twists. You're told that redemption is in play. Did that factor or change anything for you, knowing that there was that second chance?
It gave me relief. I respect when games will do redemption. I know that I am always up for an early boot. Like it, although there were other people that were in my like age group, I believe 10 years older than everyone else on my tribe. And it's just always in my head that like, I know I could be an early boot. So I like when there is redemption. I like Redemption Island. I think it's a kind thing for games to do. We try, for us, as a mom, I like had, when I had to rearrange my life to like make it so that I can be playing, fly across country. Like I would like to be able to play more than like a day or two, So already this game is also kind by having 2 days of reward challenges. So every game out there, have reward challenges in the beginning, have redemption, have twists that allow everyone to be involved as much as possible.
You also learn fire tokens will be in this season. Now, have you had fire tokens in a game you played before?
Yes, there were fire tokens in Survivor Pennsylvania Altoona, which was the game that I won. I at one point had like 16 of them, and they were like all over the place. I like fire tokens. I was expecting them to be an even bigger factor than they were in this game, and also I feel like this was another thing that, like, when people wanted to say something like negative about my game, this is one of the things they would say was like, I was really focused on that these are going to become more powerful as the game goes on, and that we should be careful with how we use them, and to like not use them for just, especially food. I was like, I don't care about food. I don't think any of us are going to care about food as much as we're going to care about advantages. And again, this is from my experience of like, I know that I can go days without food. I do not do well without sleep though. So I was like, advantages or comfort, that's all I'm interested in. And I did voice that maybe more strongly than some people. Maybe they thought they would be hungrier, but I was really only interested in those. And it came up again on redemption because we had fire tokens on redemption, and they said like we had to decide on things collectively. Like if all the fire tokens that we had were collective, and then they would offer us like, well, do you want Gatorade for like 2 fire tokens? And I was like, hell no, like we are not taking any of that. We need those fire tokens for when we get back in the game. And then they ultimately, I think I kind of broke how they wanted to do it. Like I was too much like, no, we only want these things. Then they were kind of like, okay, they tried to say it without saying that, like, no matter what, when people get back in their game, they're going to have like certain things that they will get. And so maybe just spend the fire tokens here. And I was like, okay. Because otherwise I was just going to be like, no to like all of the things. And then like poor Debbie and Joe were like, we just want coffee or whatever. You know? Like, we'll have nothing unless it's a sleeping bag or gives us power in the game.
Yeah, I think that's interesting. We'll talk about later how fire tokens work. A lot of ways we're this kind of collective yet individual thing, but for both in the game and the redemption camp.
When I finally got to go to the outpost, I had all my, all the tokens, and there was no advantage that I could get. And like, there were no advantages for sale. And the only comfort thing was a camping chair, which I wanted a chair. I had talked about wanting a chair like the whole time.
It makes a difference.
I want a chair, but I couldn't spend like 8 or 9 fire tokens on it because I'd be using other people's tokens for like one chair. I was like, I'm not doing that. In the end, I got the ketchup for one token because like the ketchup, as discussed, had gone up and down in price. Apparently it was like 12 tokens the time before. And like, I had been like, well, did they hide something in the ketchup? Like, it's a bag of ketchup. Did you look around in it? And they were like, oh no, I forgot to look. I looked around in the packet. I did not see anything, but I was like, maybe I'll use one of my own tokens and maybe there'll be some secret twist, but there was not. It was just some ketchup, which I did not care about, and I did not eat. I gave it to other people. Some people ate ketchup, but.
When did you head to the outpost?
I went with Jordan, and it was the round before Danny went home. I'm sorry that I'm all out of order.
No, it's all good. So was this so because I just don't have this in my notes. So was this following the Steal the Bacon challenge?
Yes. Yeah, okay. It was following the Steal the Bacon. So Jordan went, and then they picked me to go. And I was a little bit worried because it meant I had less time to do strategy talk because my tribe had lost and we were going to go to tribal. But I was happy to talk to Jordan. We didn't go too much into like what's happening on your tribe and my tribe. I felt like we were just sort of respecting each other's games a little bit more, but like knowing that like when we get back together, like we could exchange more information. It was good to see her. And she did, she was a little bit on the sneakier side, like suggesting that like, well, if I did buy something, I could tell people that I spent more than I did for it. Like I could say that I paid like all this money for the ketchup or something, but I was like, I'm not going to do that. I don't want to, I know I'm not a good liar and I don't want to have to like make up lies that are not necessary. And also, yeah, so I was like, I'm going to keep it simple. and she brought some food that round. Like it was like fish with like hush puppies and French fries. It did not look appealing to me, but I was also like, there's no way I'm getting this anyway. I can't eat any of this. It looks like cold French fries. Like it was like 0% appealing to me. And I wanted an advantage, and I was like, you know what? There's nothing here. So everyone's
What was the one food item, if they served it, you would have bought it hands down no matter what?
nothing.
Nothing. Absolutely nothing. Not even your most favorite thing you have cracked for.
No. At that point, I wasn't. I mean, no, I wasn't hungry. We had a few bites of rice. There was a few like blackberries, but like I think food for me is like very much like, okay, when in my normal life, I'm like, okay, it's breakfast time, it's lunchtime, it's dinner. You have like your certain times and it's like routine. But when you're playing a game, that routine isn't there. You don't even know what time it is. You're busy doing other things. Yeah. And then I just don't feel like I ever got like super hungry. People were also eating certain like plants that were around, but just little bits. When we got to Redemption, they hooked us up with some food, and that, it's like the kind of thing when you do get food in a game, it's like, oh, that's really good. It like makes you appreciate it more. Like this is the best, like, thing of mixed nuts I ever had or whatever. But so it's like I would appreciate the food that was there, but I wasn't very worried about it. I mean, I guess even in the gross food challenge, see how I'm skipping around. Listen, it's like I'm just flowing with this, but like there was a gross food challenge. I couldn't do it because it wasn't vegan, and that was disappointing, especially because, Stephen, you may remember you and I have a history of gross food, and on Redemption in Bloomington, we did a gross food challenge. They made it vegan so that I could participate. And who won? Me. I won the food challenge. Okay. So it was a little bit of a bummer to not be able to do the gross food challenge in Reelfoot, especially because I went out after that. If I had played that I went out that round. So that was too bad. But anyway, I did eat some tofu that was supposedly gross. And I was just like, I'll eat this leftover tofu. I was defending tofu's honor also, like in the gross food challenge. I was like, the only reason it's gross is because it's being given to you raw.
Yeah, I was wondering about that because I've had a lot of tofu, but like I've never just flat out just eaten the raw chunk of it, I guess.
It's not like recommended way to eat it. Like you can put it in a smoothie and you're eating it raw. It's like it's already cooked and prepared. It's perfectly healthy for you. But
I'm sorry, are tofu smoothies a thing?
Yeah, well, if you get silken tofu, so there's silken, there's soft, there's medium, there's
because I think I've always like done hard tofu when I've cooked.
Yeah, that's generally what you would use. But if you wanted to make like a chocolate pudding, you would use silken, or like a smoothie, you would use silken tofu for that. So or you could make like a vegan egg salad with tofu or something like that. You're eating raw tofu, but it's just prepared. So whatever. I mean, I ate the plain tofu. This was something that I did because I was in the game and I was like, this will be good for me. But even that wasn't like, oh, I'm so hungry, but it was like, I know that I should eat this thing. So
I think my favorite thing from the Bloomington Gross Food Challenge, I think you and Jamie are both like, I have this in my everyday life, and you just scarf it down and you win. It's like, well, like, I don't think any of us are beating them.
Like, oh, who likes sauerkraut? I'm like, I make sauerkraut.
I'm still waiting for the footage of Marchand eating that pickle. It needs to be released someday.
Some of our Bloomington Redemption footage is lost. I'm sure I looked very gross with eating all that gross food with it all over my mouth, but that's what Reelfoot missed by not having it be a challenge that I could participate in. It's fine. They sort of like were apologetic about it, and I understand these things happen, but it was a little bit of a bummer that that's the round that I went out on and I couldn't even like do the challenge. But anyway, there was nothing that get back to your original question. There was nothing that I was going to buy at the outpost that was food. Like, even if it was one token and it was just like a vegan ice cream sundae, like I'd just be like, no, because you don't know if the next thing is going to be an idol. That's what I want.
No, because your tribe was winning a lot.
Mhm.
At least for the first day or two.
We won all the rewards. Yeah, actually, let me talk about one of the like the reward trip that we had because
Mhm.
I don't think that's been discussed. It helps that Debbie did the first interview and she was on the other tribe, so I'm like, I have some new information.
Yeah,
But
you get to lay the land of Okina for me because it's all black box.
yes, um, well, and I'm not going in specific order, but like so the first. Okay, let me go in order. We had the Quest for Fire
Hmm.
challenge. We won that. It was it was fine. It was good. That's where I believe we won maybe stuff to get the tarp. Like the tarp was the
Yeah.
priority. Um, and then we had the vertical table maze.
Hmm.
And that was I would just want to give some props to Nate for doing a lot of this challenge work and design. I'm sure he had help, but like he really held down the challenges. I really liked the how Reelfoot, especially in these reward challenges, but all the challenges, they made it so that we all had to do it. So like the vertical wall thing, you pull the
Hmm.
I'm like, you pull the thing, the ball goes up into the, you try to make it not go into the holes. Like, I don't know. Look at a picture of what this is. But ordinarily,
There's a hero
somebody
role.
who's trying to avoid being in the hero role of a challenge, I would be like, no, I don't want to do this. Even though I've done this before successfully, I wouldn't have put myself forward to do this in a challenge for
Hmm.
the team. But instead, they had us all doing it. They had us like rotate. Once your ball fell, the next person had to go and try, and then the next person. So there was a longer amount of like the learning curve took longer because everyone had to learn a little bit. But it was fun because we all got to like push ourselves by trying this. And there was no way that one person was going to blow this challenge for the team. It was like
Hmm.
if you were just bad at this maze puzzle thing, then like you were just out quick and the next person could go. So it was really very nice how they had that set up. And then they also had part of the challenge was once the ball um, went through the hole, someone had to run down the field and open a box, and there were maybe 15 different boxes, and you had to open the box and you would either get maybe a fire token or maybe a ball or maybe nothing was in there.
Hmm.
So and you didn't so you run down, you open a box, you come back. And so there was a certain amount of like you had to pay attention to which boxes from both teams had already been opened so that you were not opening a box that other people had already checked. And I thought that was also really fun because you're distracted by watching what's happening on your maze, but you really
Hmm.
have to be watching the other tribe as well. And I was successful in this challenge by getting two of the balls by by luck or by watching what was happening. I was like I contributed, so I was glad. But I thought that that was an interesting way to do that particular challenge. Um, and and then we did the kayak with the puzzle pieces.
Hmm.
I had gone kayaking before. I didn't do great at this kayak thing, but it was fine. I wasn't too worried about it.
You didn't
Sure,
flip your boat.
I didn't, and that I think that like that really got us relaxed because the kayak flipping was like happened right in the beginning, and we're like, okay, we should take our time. We should be a little chill about
Hmm.
this. Like we're fine. But then the other team was like they were booking it. Like they almost like caught up at a certain times because they were going so fast after they knew that they had lost so much time. And it did, the puzzle people on this did a great job. It was a very complicated puzzle. They showed me. I still was kind of like I don't understand what they did. So have the Reelfoot people or have like German and Tony explain what that puzzle was when they do their
This is the fish
podcast.
puzzle, right?
It
The
was
four by four fish.
there were fish. It was maybe more than four. I don't know. There
Okay,
was
five
some
by five. There was a
colors.
grid you had to lay out the pieces in. It looked like there was some pattern you had to figure out.
Yeah, it was pattern. There were some colors. I thought it was going to be the tumultuous tiles where you have five different shapes, five different colors, and you couldn't have the same shape and color
Hmm.
in the same row. And I was trying to give them like I was trying to explain how that puzzle works to them while we were waiting in the kayak because I was like, I think this is what the puzzle is. But then when we got and even while we were watching, I still thought that's what the puzzle was. But then in the end, I was like, oh no, that's not what's going on here. So I don't understand it. This is why I do not sign up for puzzles. So, but yes. Oh yeah. So anyway, so those were the challenges. Let me say that one of those challenges we won. We got to go on a reward to Reelfoot Lake and we were supposed to get a boat ride, but actually it was the boat ride part got canceled because of the rain. And also we had won a reward. One of the things we had won was like a reward of one item of our clothing could go in the dryer. So like I dried my raincoat, which had gotten all the way soaked through. But then I didn't have my raincoat when we went to the lake because they were doing the drying at the same time. And I was like, okay, is it going to be raining and I'm not going to have my raincoat? And they were like, oh, it's probably not supposed to rain. But then it did rain while we were there and I didn't have my raincoat. But also, so we ended up not going on the boat ride, but we did see the lake and it was very beautiful. It was very fun. And we got half a peanut butter and jelly sandwich along with like some chips and a Capri Sun or something like that. That was nice. It was good to have. This is another reason why I'm not that worried about food is because we get food sometimes in rewards at the merge feast, different things like that. And I thought it was funny because they bring us. So first of all, we are gross. We are very gross at this point.
It's only day 2 and you're feeling gross.
We are dirt covered gross. We're just happy to be inside and like there was like a bathroom. And we're like, okay, like I'm just like trying to wash my feet and like my legs and stuff in this bathroom. I'm like, I don't care who's coming in. Like there's like dirt everywhere. Like, was it like in Charlie Brown where there's like the pig pen? Like there's just like a trail of dirt after us.
Yep.
Like, that's what we're doing. And they bring us into a room and they have this like ranger guy like giving us a little talk about snakes and like brings out animal pelts and stuff. And I'm like, great. And then there's, Hannah holds the snake and like all this. This room had no chairs. Okay. They bring us into a room. It's just like this room that they must bring school classes in and they give presentations. All I wanted was a chair. It was like, why are you making us stand here? We were standing, listening to this guy talk about nature. Joe has an idea to try to prolong the being indoors and like this reward for as long as possible. So she decides she's just going to ask questions over and over again, like all these different questions about like like nature and what we can eat and like I don't know what she asked, but she at a certain point was just like, I'm just gonna ask a bunch of questions, and we're like, okay, Joe. And I just wanted to sit down.
Your quest for a chair continued.
Yeah, I was like, why are you gonna bring us inside and there's no chairs? But we used the bathroom. That was a highlight. That was great. I did actually fall asleep for like, it was probably like a 10 or 15 minute drive from where we were to the lake. I fell asleep in the car ride on the way back because I was like, this is how tired we were. We had like 10 minutes. I'm like, yes, I can fall asleep right now. Because we did not sleep at all the first at least 2 nights. I didn't. But okay, so I did want to tell you about that reward. It was also a very beautiful lake. I wish we could have gone on the boat, but it was nice to see that. And yeah, like the guy's talk, he was nice, but I feel like he's used to talking to like middle schoolers or something about, like it was fine.
Well, I imagine some of the people, their outdoor knowledge is not like middle schoolers. Is like, at least for me, no survival skills. I know how to sleep from freezing cold on the bare ground. That's kind of it.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, it was cute. It was cute.
So after all these reward challenges, you're having players go to the outpost. Were there any ramifications or repercussions from these visits?
I mean, I wasn't super suspicious of the people going or what was happening. It didn't seem like major. Like, I guess I found out that there was actually like clues to the idol that were revealed there. And ultimately, when it was clear that I was in trouble, Tony told me like about the clue that he had and like tried to look for it. I don't know that you'll have to talk to like Melissa and Tony about like the specific timeline of when actually the
Melissa got the idol
found. Like, yeah, I don't really know. Eventually I was told about it, but it was like, I feel like I wasn't the first or the second and probably maybe like the fourth person to know about it. I don't know. But yeah, I wasn't, it didn't feel like that big of a deal of like the going to the outpost because it was like we were all kind of collectively giving the tokens and yeah, maybe somebody was fudging it a little bit, but like I I didn't really want to actively go, and I wasn't against going. I was
Mm-hmm.
happy that when I went, it was with Jordan so that like we could talk and connect in the game. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I feel like, especially because when I went, there was no advantage to going, and it cut into my time in strategy. So
Mm-hmm.
that was a little bit dangerous for me, but it worked out when I got back. That was when Danny had uh, gathered everyone together to say that he was feeling like he needed to step out of the game, and that like
Mm-hmm.
his health was a factor in that decision, and that he
Mm-hmm.
felt like he got what he wanted. And I would like, he can talk more about that.
Mm-hmm.
But it did sort of, I don't know that it would have been me that round. I don't know, because I basically got there and it was like, okay, Danny was gathering everybody to say it should be him. So I don't even know what other strategy talk was happening at that moment. So that was sad to see him go. Him and I didn't have a lot of in-game time and connections. So like the
Mm-hmm.
little strategy talk we had was good. But I mean, outside of the game, like at the prod house, we had a great time. Danny is totally amazing and gives the sweetest hugs and has great energy. And like, I really respect also that when somebody does leave the game like that, he stayed the whole time and was like very involved,
Mm-hmm.
and like really helped set the good energy at the prod house. So so I felt like grateful that if you like I wasn't being kicked out that time, and also I respected that he was listening to his body and felt like he was comfortable with the decision he was making.
So, kind of going back to day 2, we kind of talked through the challenges that day. You win that first immunity challenge. How are you feeling night 2?
So night 2, I was surprised that it was just as cold.
Well, let me back up. Sorry.
I
End of day 2, before you go to bed, how are you feeling strategically with your tribe? How do you feel
felt
the vibe of the
okay.
tribe?
I felt okay because I had heard multiple names that were not me. So I was like, okay, who's going to be first out? Well, I think that it's going to be Joe. I think that universally it's going to be Joe. But even after that, I had heard like German's name. I felt like potentially it could be Charlie,
Mm-hmm.
which Charlie didn't. For me, I was thinking like, and I know I have a confessional where I'm saying this, like my preference for a first out would be for it to not be a woman or a person of color. And that only leaves like 3 like white guys on our tribe in the first place. And then Tony was like who I was like my number 1 at this point. So that really only leaves Charlie and Ethan. And I had another sort of connection with Ethan that I thought that Ethan and I would be working together. And at least wouldn't be coming for each other early on. Like we had sort of our own sort of connection, which is why I was like, it would be fine if it was Charlie. But at the same time, I was willing to, this wasn't a locked in stone strategy. This was just kind of like my preference. And I feel like at a certain point, I wasn't able to save Joe anyway from like the dynamics that were going on. So I felt okay because I was like, all right, well, you only need a couple people to be ahead of you, especially when we've won all the rewards already. And then we won the immunity challenge. So I'm like, okay, you just have to kind of make it through a few. And I felt like we were, they said we were the Kumbaya tribe. I didn't see a lot of strategy talk. We really didn't have places to escape to. We really were like all stuck in a few little places. So
this makes me want to almost do a treaty of like, how does the setup or location of her tribe shape the tribe and the strategy talk? Because like at least on CBS Survivor, they have a pretty large area they can roam about. But in games I played, sometimes you're like, here's the patch of dry area, or here's the clear area, and then like you're like, oh, not much else. Like even like Bloomington last year, like you saw where the Order tribe was initially. You had kind of the main area, and you had 2 paths, and like you can kind of tromp around in the middle. But it was like,
I think that I thought about this a lot. I think that so one of the things about our camp, which can't be overstated, it was very muddy. Like not like a little bit of mud.
I wonder if you got that. So like
Very
2 years
muddy.
ago, there was a camp for one of the tribes in Fowler's Point. There was like, it was a mud pile. It was a mud pile. It was just a giant sinkhole of mud, and everyone just complained about that. I wonder if it was the same
Yes.
place.
It might have been because there, like I was lying in the shelter on the tarp being like, how the other tribe only had one tarp. I was like, we could not have existed with one tarp. We would have had to lie on the ground getting covered in water because it was like we were losing our shoes in the mud. It was unsafe. Like in the end, we were like, we have to move like where the fire is because it's not safe. Like we're gonna fall into the fire because there is mud all around it. We ended up having to sort of build like a bridge of like we put some logs and just to get from like one place to the water. Like it was very muddy. And it really impacted why we couldn't sit anywhere. Like we only had two places to exist. And then like really there was this hill, and down the hill was where the clue for the idol was ultimately. So it was like some people would like use that to like, oh, I'm going to the bathroom, and they would like go down there. But like there really was there weren't a lot of places to go. And like people, the tree mail was further down the path, but like there was no reason to go to the tree mail. Like it was like, Prodigy is going to come and tell you when I feel like we needed a little bit more space, and we would have maybe had it if it hadn't been so muddy. Like maybe then there would have been more reason to go down the hill or something. So I did production for Surviving Bloomington this past week, and their camps, it was in a different location, and they had like the water well was like all the way down, and I was like, this is what we needed. Like we needed the water to be somewhere else. The water
was your water just in camp?
Yeah, it was like right next to the fire, right next to the shelter. Like there was no like, let's go get water.
I feel like that does make a massive difference. It's like like having water right there, because they're like, oh, we don't need to go anywhere. But if water is not there, you're like, well, I need to go walk X minutes away to go get water. Who wants to go with me?
I had the water by the tree mail or something, but like, yeah, we just carried our water in so we could put it where we wanted. And so it was very muddy. And there was no place to sit except like two places, and I am in favor of sitting.
So day 3, your opening challenge. It's kind of like I have it listed just as a silent relay race. But like at different stations, certain people can't talk or can't like communicate, and you have to still figure out other ways to communicate information stage by stage.
Yes.
And, talk to me about this challenge. And
so when they were explaining the challenge, we're all just kind of like, what? It seemed very complicated. And then they walked us through it, and we're like, okay. Like, and I ended up doing the part where I'm blindfolded and I just have to like run down the field, and it was like a straight field. I thought they would maybe put obstacles in front of us or something, but no, it was like just a straight shot down to a puzzle piece to like come back and get it. But my thing was at the end. So it was like the other team basically won as I was doing my little
That's what I thought I remembered. It was like you were like, as soon as you get there, another team wins.
Yeah. And a few things about this challenge. One that I don't think I told anyone in the game is that I knew that there would probably be a fire token at the end of my thing where I got was getting the puzzle. So when I was like, the game was over, I took off my blindfold and took my fire token that was sitting right there, and then I didn't tell anybody.
Nice.
And also I figured there was probably a fire token at the puzzle that we didn't get to, and so then we walked over to the puzzle, and I sort of like showed, I think and somebody, I'm like, oh, was it Danny? I don't remember, but I was like, oh, here's a fire token, someone should take that, and like kind of like let somebody else find it. So that felt fun. And the other thing I will say about this was we lost this on the charades aspect of things. Like there was a part that was like a complicated charades puzzle, which I didn't see, like, so someone else can talk about it when they do their thing. But I want to use it as an example to say that you never know by looking at somebody, like if they're going to be good at a challenge. Like you don't know from looking at someone if they're good at charades. The end. Okay. So who is a challenge beast is like, we need to move past that LRG community. Let's move past who we think is going to be good at challenges. You don't know if the challenge you're going to do is charades. Okay. Like, that is why we love
it sounds like the easiest solution is you just need to play this at your camp on day one. And
maybe.
like, you got people like say, I'm good at puzzles and balance. I can run, I can swim, I can kayak, and I can charade like no other. That just needs to be part of the LRG lexicon, baby.
I mean, I tell people that I can be blindfolded and like go around. I don't think I'm the fastest or anything, but it's like, I'm never going to get in trouble for being like bad at being blindfolded. Like, it's just like, I'm like, just blindfold me and tell me to do something. It's fine. But I will say, leading up to this, so there's a couple things leading up to this that I think are funny. So we're at our camp and they tell us like, okay, the thing you have to do is like make a stretcher for this challenge. So I'm like, oh, they did this in Borneo. I remember what the stretcher looks like. I kind of give some ideas about it, which later I heard Prod say that they didn't like our stretcher, but whatever. Our stretcher worked fine. Melissa had done something like this before and she knew that she could be on top of it in a certain way. Charlie, the Boy Scout, was like, did some ropes. He did a great job on the ropes. One funny thing about this, that like while we were doing this prep, Joe is like, we can use duct tape. And we're like, what duct tape? We don't have, she's like, this duct tape right here. And we're like, where did you get this duct tape? This isn't from anything, and we have a specific list of things we can take to Reelfoot, of course. And she's like, oh, from like when we were in the production house, like before the game started, some of the people's bags were falling apart and like we used duct tape to kind of keep them together. And so she stole it. And
a time-honored LRG tradition.
She really, apparently, she really thought that like stealing from production was like part of the game. And so she wanted to use duct tape in the challenge. And we're like, Joe, like, if we show up with something held together by duct tape, the other team is going to be like, they're cheating. Like, we can't do that. Like, I thought it was hilarious. Yeah, that was one of my favorite like Joe stories. But I thought that was very funny. But then the other thing is, this is when the rattlesnake was discovered. So we were practicing holding seeing who could hold up, who could carry the stretcher with Melissa on it and Hannah on it. And we were like trying to figure out like, who would be best for what roles. So I think it was, I could be wrong. I think it was maybe Tony and German were trying to carry Melissa and they were carrying her. And then somebody says snake and they drop her. They drop this. It breaks. The stretcher breaks in half. And then Prod, we're like, there's a snake, there's a rattlesnake. And like, Melissa's okay and whatever. But it was like, oh, this is like the worst thing to happen is like people to yell and then like drop her. And like, it was like a few feet away. Like it is close. The snake did not care. He just like chilled out over there. Or we like get on the walkie-talkie. And then Prod comes and they're like, oh, we're going to go to the challenge. We're like, hold on. We can't go to like our stretcher just broke. We made it, but a rattlesnake came and like give us a few minutes to fix our stretcher, So I'm sure you'll get the rattlesnake story from everyone who is there, but that does stand out as a big moment. I had never seen a rattlesnake before. As I have been outdoors. I'm comfortable outdoors, but I've never lived in a place that had venomous snakes. So that was not, and then through the whole, like before the game, they kept giving us like warnings and like pictures of different snakes. And they're like, is this snake poisonous? Or I was like, it doesn't matter. I'm not going to poke any snakes, whether they are venomous or not. They are all going to just stay over there. Like I am not going to be involved with the snakes. But it was cool to like, actually, I did like sneak over to see it. And like, I will say it was like a cool life experience to see a rattlesnake. It'll be okay if I never see one again, but it happened and I'm glad.
If you come to College Station, there's this iconic bar called the Dixie Chicken. That's like one of the it's an extremely old building. And they have a rattlesnake inside. So you can come to the bar and see a rattlesnake there too. In all your free time.
I'm like, it's all right. I saw one in the wild. That's better. I believe in animals being in the wild. So like, it's fine.
So yes. Your tribe loses your first challenge of the season. You've kind of said like, Joe's name had been out there and was a likely first boot. What was the strategy of this round looking like for you?
Okay. So we're walking back. First of all, Joe has shared a lot of her like personal life. She has talked a lot about different things going on in her life. Some of which I like related to. I felt like I felt like her and Danny were probably closest. Like they spent a lot of time working on camp stuff together. But I did feel like she was somebody that I was sympathetic towards like some of the things that she was talking about. And so I felt like she was probably definitely going to be the first vote, but I walked back with her specifically. And also I don't think she had talked game with like anybody.
Hmm.
Um, and I also felt like I could sort of see the energy that she didn't like that other people were talking. And then she maybe felt left out by that.
Hmm.
I don't, she'll give, she might have more to say about how that felt, but, I wanted to specifically have a conversation with her. Um, and so I walked back at the end of the challenge with her, and she said she thinks that she's getting votes or that she might be going home or she's in trouble or something. And I was like, well, if you think that, like, you definitely want to be having strategy conversations with everyone, maybe put somebody else's name out. If you think it's going to be you, you got to like put out somebody else's name. And I also sort of circled back to a conversation that I had seen in front of me where Melissa went up to her and tried to just say like, hey, I have like, an open door if you want to talk. Like Melissa was trying to
Yeah.
extend like let's talk about the game. And Joe was kind of like, well, I'm busy right now and I don't really know what to say if it's hard for me to build trust or something, like basically saying something about trust and not really feeling comfortable. So Melissa, I think rightly like got this impression of like, well, Joe doesn't want to work with me. Cause it was sort of like, it was like, hey, I'd like to have a conversation. And Joe was like, no, I'm busy and I don't trust you. But I don't know that that's what Joe was trying to say, but
Yeah.
I kind of gave Joe some feedback. Like you should definitely like go back and talk to Melissa. Because I think she probably felt like you didn't want to talk to her. So I felt like I was giving kind and supportive and like important information about how she could move forward. And then when I get back to the camp, I found out that she's decided to give my name as the name to throw out. I was
Oh
like,
no.
why? Like I was really kind of shocked by that and also like confused by it because I really felt like I was like someone that was trying to like help her out and work with her. Like if she had been able to switch it up, like that would have been great. And we also weren't sure if she had an idol. And I was like, if she has an idol and like there are other people that I could vote out right now. Like, like maybe something can happen. We weren't really sure if Joe was like a mastermind or like, or like really just like have some different plans. I think in the end, it was like, she just had a really different game than like what I was used to. And the values of what she had in the game versus me is like very different. Which is fine. We're all different. But I was like kind of hurt also. Cause like the things that she was saying as like the reasons why was like, oh, like not that I wasn't doing enough around camp or that also there's these like giant water bottles. And like at a certain point I was like, I needed help carrying the water bottle and was like, oh, like if I wasn't strong enough to carry the water bottle. And I was like, I carried the water bottle with someone else. Like I was like not refusing to like carry the water bottles. So I was a little frustrated by that. And I'm like, I don't know why she like chose me as the name, whether it was just like, she really felt like I was like the weakest on the tribe. You can find out from her. So that was stressful because then it was like, well, what if she does have an idol? So then we had a whole like thing with, well, we got ultimately 3 votes on Danny to cover in case there was some other plan going on. And in this round, also like there was a little bit of like, I wanted to work with Trinica and there was like a moment where I was talking about the split that was going to happen. And Trinica was like, oh, what split? And like, they sort of like made it sound like they didn't know about the split. And I was like, later on, talked to Melissa and like Melissa talked about who was there during the conversation about the split and Trinica was there. So like in my head, I'm like, this is a pretty minor thing, but I think Trinica had a conversation that they thought that I was not part of like knowing about what the game was. So then I knew that like there were some other people having some other conversations in which I was maybe not like in the loop. But I just kind of was like, yeah, we're cool. No big deal. But in my head, I was kind of like, what's going on here? Which is just foreshadowing for future. Like, but ultimately, you know, literally every person reassured me that like, although my name was out there, like nobody was going in that direction. And then ultimately the vote went the way that I was expecting to go. Ultimately, at first, I was not going to be one of the people that was voting for Danny, but I was like, I feel better about putting down Danny's name in case of an idol or whatever, something weird's going on. So we flipped, like Tony was going to be voting for Danny, but I was like, let me vote Danny and you vote Joe. And so, but I mean, nobody, like Danny was the vote in case she had an idol, but really it was, it was a united thing around Joe.
And so was Joe then probably the one who voted for you?
Yeah, she definitely was.
Okay. And why Danny?
Because it was perceived that Danny was maybe the closest one with her in terms of like the work that Danny was doing around the fire and camp life stuff. But it really didn't have anything to do with like Danny as a lovely person. Also probably had to do with the fact that there was an alliance that I didn't know about that Danny was not part of. I was not part of. I don't know when that alliance officially came, but like my thinking was that Danny was like somebody that if Joe had some secret like network that she was working with, that Danny would have been in that group.
So Joe goes out in a sorry, go ahead.
I was also going to say that by this point I had also sort of clocked that I thought that Ethan and Trinica were very close because they had, when you asked about the second night, there was a lot of shivering. There was like all 10 of us trying to get in there. And in the little area at a certain point, Ethan was shaking and like Trinica wanted to like go over and like take care of him, but like he already had people on both sides of him. I was like, Trinica, don't leave me. You're like, giving me all this heat. Eventually, like at a certain point, like Ethan got up and stayed up almost all night taking care of the fire, and Trinica like also got up. And in the morning, I remember being like, wow, they must be like, besties at this point. There was a lot. So like, which is just like foreshadowing of other things, but I'm like, I feel good about how I did have some like good reads on what was going on in camp.
I mean, I think it's something here at Survivor, and I've seen it play out in games, is like who's sleeping by who. Like it's just a way of saying who is spending time with each other that kind of illuminates roughly like who are they trusting, who are they kind of working with.
Yeah, I mean, which. Yeah, I think is there's some truth and some not truth, but like, I feel like if you stay up by the fire with somebody, like you're having some conversations, and at the same time, there's like a certain human element too. Like even like German and I didn't like ultimately work together. There was a time when he like came into the shelter and he was so cold, and I'm like, I'm just going to hold you in my arms now. Like, and he's going to like have like this moment of like, I'm like, okay, we're here. Like, so, I don't know. It was definitely a bonding experience. Those first 2 nights, I will say 3 nights.
So Joe goes home on a 6-3-1 vote. You roll to the next challenge. This is the Steal the Bacon challenge.
Yes.
Did you like this?
Well, so in Steal the Bacon, it was basically just in case people didn't know, like we run down the field, there's a ball, one of the two people, it's a head to head, one of the people grabs the ball and the other person can like, you could either like run back or get tackled, and you have to like drag each other back, and whoever gets back to their mat wins. So it was very physical. Everybody had to go once. Because it was like first to 10 points or something. And so there were 10 of us. I went against Sandra and I did get a point, but then it was clear though that I couldn't go again. I didn't think that I would like necessarily beat anybody else, and they could choose once we had both gone, like they could choose any woman to like go against me or something. So I got my point. that was it for me. I was satisfied. But what was really powerful about this challenge was just watching the other people like really push themselves. It's very inspiring. Like I knew that Jordan, for example, like I knew that she was super strong from like knowing her from Survival Challenge, but like seeing Trinica and Jordan like wrestle each other,
Hitting each
hold each
other.
other down for like a long time and like not be and like just giving it all they had. And then several other rounds like that of different people. I think that they probably won't do this one again because maybe it was like so physical. But it was powerful to watch. I mean, I like to see people push themselves like that. I don't want to see people get hurt. Think that some people were worried that folks would get hurt. But we were okay. And it was a very physical challenge. I think overall, a lot of these challenges it was a very physical season. It's part of what we like about Survivor, but also like, damn. Yeah, I would say that I mean, it was, I feel like other
Melanie, your
people
notifications I can hear in the chat.
let's see. I don't know. I turned off my phone. I just closed this maybe. Okay. All right. We'll see. Listen, I get a lot of beeping and alerts. Sorry about that, everyone. I think that like it's best for each person, like when you talk to them to like give because there were several like very powerful pairings and duos in this, but like mine was pretty straightforward. So save some of that excitement for the next interviews.
So your tribe loses this and you are
that's when I go to
you go to the outpost with Jordan. You don't buy anything.
Yeah. Oh, I buy for 1 token ketchup. And like, then I told everyone, like, listen, it was just my own ketchup. But one important thing about this is since I was the last person, everyone had given me their tokens. So then I come back and I give the tokens back. But there are some that were just like leftover, like tribe tokens. And I kept those in my pocket. And then when I did get voted out, I had those extra tokens with me.
How many tokens did you walk out with?
I think I had 5 or 6. And I had asked at the voting booth, I asked if the fire tokens that I have, if they die or they come to redemption with me. And they said that they come to redemption. Because if they said that they die, I was just going to give them to Tony before the votes were read. But alas, they told me that I could keep them, but then they were like really just communal at redemption and were not as powerful as I was hoping. But I did get a little joy of being like, you vote me out, I take your tokens. But
so we've kind of talked through. So like you get back and you kind of make it to when Danny says, hey, I'd like you all to vote me.
Yes. And like everybody's like, people are crying. I was surprised. Like I had seen like Danny will tell you their story. But like we had seen Danny being sick a couple times. And they talked about it a little bit, but like, yeah, it's always sad when someone leaves on those kinds of terms of the game. So, but you know, it was very like heartfelt and like lots of love for Danny, of course. So hopefully he'll get back on track and like be in the next game, you know, like he was great energy, great player.
Well, I imagine again, the not sleeping, the rain, the cold, that all can play havoc on people, and it could have been very different had it been a more milder opening to the season.
Yeah, I mean, he has an ongoing health issue that like was acting up, so it wasn't like an issue of the elements being too hard. It was like his active health conditions, which again, I'm like, I'm sure he will talk about. But I feel like it's for him to say.
So 2 things for you. Ideally, who would you want to have targeted this round?
If Danny hadn't.
Yes.
For me, it was honestly, it could have still been Danny because what as came back for me, but like once somebody's name is out there, it's like there, which I was worried about with my name, with me getting a vote in the first round too. That's why I was like, oh, now that my name is out there, like people already like had these conversations about why they should vote me out, whatever. But so I sort of thought that it would potentially be Danny, but again, I had like no conversations because I didn't even have preliminary conversations. I got back from Outpost and it was like, Danny's making this announcement. So I don't know what other people were saying that round. Your best bet is to ask other people that. But Danny and I only had one real strategy talk, and it was around Joe. And I did feel like it was a good conversation. I felt like it was a little bit later. Like I had already had strategy talks with a lot of other people before having that talk with Danny. So that was also kind of not ideal for me and Danny to work together, but like it was mostly just because of circumstance and because Danny was working on the fire and spending a lot of time with Joe. So there could have been more time where Danny and I connected, but we didn't really have much strategy talk in the game.
Anything about the Danny tribal counseling one that's worth bringing up?
I mean, I feel like I know Danny's ready to talk to you and give your podcast. So I'm like, I don't want to steal anyone's thunder. No, it was pretty straightforward. We didn't even like go into the write it down. We just sort of said the names. Yeah.
So your last challenge this evening of day 3 is the gross food challenge. We talked about you do not participate in.
Yeah, and to their credit, they told us ahead of time, like they were like, if you are a vegetarian or vegan, like you're basically not gonna be able to do this. Like, and I was like, okay, well, thanks for saving me that energy. Like, it was fun so it was set up that each tribe, it was like one person would be immune from each tribe, and so our tribe went, and then their tribe went, and it was funny because like when we had gone around, our tribe had talked about what our strengths and weaknesses are. Several people said how food was going to be like the worst thing for them. So we knew that if we had gone our tribe versus their tribe, we would have lost. Like we were not good at the food challenge. Like, people struggled with the most basic things. Like we were just like, well, at least they have to go to tribal too, because we would have had to go to tribal no matter. Like this was not our thing to win. So there was that. And like, we got to kind of watch and have a little bit of interaction with the other tribe during this. And then also it's always sad to see people like, I had this experience in Survival Challenge as well, where it was like a gross food challenge that I couldn't participate in that challenge either. And it was a bummer because that was a tribe one, and it was like however many plates of food your tribe ate versus the others. But like basically a bunch of my tribe mates are like puking, like they're going so hard and then they like puke. And like, that was what was happening at Reelfoot as well. And it's like, it's sad to see your friends sick, especially if I'm just like, yeah, I'm not doing that because I can't. And then I just see all these other people like getting themselves ill. So I always feel a little bit sad about that for people.
So Joe's gone, Danny's gone. The 2 potential easy votes are gone. This is where push comes to shove on your tribe. Now, walk me through, because you don't have tribal council till morning day 4. So you have all night and tomorrow morning.
Yeah, wasn't that so
agonize.
Nice? Right?
Well, I mean, hopefully this wasn't them saying, hey, Melanie, we're voting you out. You're just like, and there's nothing you can do about it, and you're going to spend the night with that knowledge. Hopefully it wasn't that.
No, it was not. It was not. So the first conversation, one of the first conversations I have actually was with Hannah and German. And this was interesting because it was one of the only conversations that I had with like multiple people. Like both of them are sitting me down and they were telling me like we could vote for Charlie. And I'm like, okay, this is interesting because on the one hand, Charlie would be somebody that I could vote out. But I also really think that it's going to be me or German. And like, I had known that German's name was out there and I had known that I got a vote before. So in my head, I'm like, this could work, but I don't really know if they were being honest when they were pitching this to me. And I also just didn't think it was going to work. Like, I really thought that it was going to be me or German. And so I have this whole conversation with them and, to be clear, like they're lovely, like everybody's lovely. Hannah, German, lovely. But I just didn't think it was going to work out that like we would have been able to put this together. But they were talking about pitching Charlie because they thought they needed to have Melissa on board, and Melissa was not going to go for Ethan or Tony. So this was getting a little bit of information of like, okay, they see the guys are a thing. They're talking about the guys, this and that. So I'm getting information that German and Hannah think that like the guys are playing together. And also I'm getting information that German really doesn't want to do Charlie because Charlie and German are close, but it seems like this is what Melissa would go for. So I'm taking all this in, I'm considering it. They pitch a plan of like, we need to go to Melissa and just kind of like open up and see like what name she says and all this. And so I'm kind of like, okay, we'll see. Let's break this up. And I go and have more conversations, wait a little while. And then I talk to Charlie and I tell Charlie all of it.
So to commiserate with how you're feeling right now.
Yeah. So I go and I tell Charlie, like, listen, they're pitching your name. And Charlie's like, what? Now I think he's like really shocked. And he was like confused of like why, like he thought German and him were really close. And I maybe should have, in retrospect, I should have like amped it up more, because instead I was like, well, he did say that he likes you and wants to work with you, but blah, blah, blah. But I should have been like, yeah, he was like, he doesn't like you at all or whatever. But again, it's like the hero mentality. Like I can't just lie for the sake of things. But I was like being honest with Charlie. In the final three, final tribal, Charlie is saying that I was just spinning stuff. I was like, no, they pitched Charlie to me and I told Charlie, and that was a true situation. Now it's also true that they were maybe just telling me this because they tell me something.
Hannah's not going to throw out German's name in front of you.
Yeah. So it's like, it's fine. But I think that conversation, like when I had that conversation, Charlie was really thrown for a loop and was like feeling closer to me. And like, that was good. And then I talked to Melissa. Melissa and I have our first sort of like really solid strategy talk. And I'm feeling so good with her, to the point where I'm like, I know that she is really good and she could just be like that good that she's making me feel so good. But ultimately through the day, and the night, I'm realizing that like, yeah, it's split between me and German. And this also is, it pours into the next day. Like it's clear it's me or German. Like Tony and Melissa are telling me like, yeah, it's split, but like, you're safe. Like you're safe. You're safe. I feel like Charlie is a little bit like, he's maybe a little bit wiggly on it. So that's when I tell Charlie, like, if I'm still here, I'll give you a fire token. I'll give you my fire token. Like, you can have it. And that was just trying to be like an extra, like, I knew I needed him. Like, here's a thing that I can give you. And I'm talking to Ethan and I still feel really good with Ethan. I want to be working with Trinica. I know that Ethan and Trinica are close. So Ethan is like, I'll like work on Trinica. And like, okay, well, those are all the people I'm like telling people I want to work with, Trinica, Ethan, Melissa, and Tony. Like that's, who I'm hoping to work with. So going into, well, and also Tony in that morning tells me that there's an idol, and that like, so we all sort of have like an openly, like we're looking for this idol as well. But I feel like I've had all the conversations I can have. At a certain point in time, me and German are talking, and all of the rest of the tribe is like over talking about like which of us they should get out. And we're just like, I mean, I'm like just telling German, like, see, like it's me or you, like this is what it is. I've been assured, and I believe them, that like I'm going to be safe. And that's because ultimately my people did think that I was going to be safe. What happened is that, what happened is that Charlie changed, like switched it, and he surprised the people that I was working with. They didn't know that he was going to switch it. But yeah, I feel like I did everything that I could. And also that me and German were cool. It was just sort of like, well, here we are. I thought it was kind of funny that they were just like having like this open thing. But I also felt really good about that. Like both of us had people that were like fighting for us. And ultimately it's like, I want allies. So I can't be like too sad. Like, I'm like, I know that if it was like an easy vote, that they would just be like, fine, we'll get her out, or fine, we'll get him out. But it was like, we both had advocates on like working for us. So that felt good.
So if you're kind of looking at battle lines, so you have Tony and Melissa advocating for you?
I believe so.
Okay.
Yeah. And I think also Ethan, I think it was, I think that you can confirm with them, but I think that it was I don't know if Charlie had told anybody else that he was going to flip it.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe Trinica knew that. I feel like maybe Trinica knew, maybe not. I think that there was like, Charlie just wasn't sure, but Charlie realized he had the power to just switch it if he wanted. And he has a voting confessional where he basically says like, well, if I vote this way, it's German. If I vote this way, it's Melanie, and I have the power to decide. And he talks about that in his final tribal as like, and I do think that was like one of the only votes where it was like it wasn't like a fake oh, we'll put a few votes on just in case there's an idol. It was like really, I think, competing interests that people
So
were
it seems like it would have been a 4-4 vote if that was the case, right? Because it ended up being a 5-3 vote on you.
Yeah, I think that there was going to be a tie, and then they were going to vote to keep me.
Okay.
That was what I was told, and like it wasn't changed after I was voted out. And people, like that was. I mean, you can get more of the scoop from everybody. They multiple people might have had different amounts of information that they knew, but I also so also, we have all that there was a lot of the scrambling. I feel like I did everything I could do at camp, and then we get to tribal and we sit down, and they're like about to ask the first question. They're like, Melanie, they're asking me the first question, and I like stand up and walk over because I see a scroll at the see it's a scroll right by where Parker is, and then barreling through German, push me aside, grab the scroll, and one of my regrets is that I should not walk to a scroll, but I should sprint to the scroll. It was just a little bit of like, both things were like, I'm being asked a question and I'm seeing this, and I'm like, I need to go get this thing. And he says that he saw it too, but he just was like waiting for, I don't know what, maybe waiting for me to stand up. Like, I don't know. Yeah, so he got the scroll. I tried to argue at tribal that would make him a bigger threat, but ultimately I thought that maybe that would be the deciding factor. If someone was going to switch, that they would switch because of that. But in the end, I don't think that was why Charlie changed his mind. I think Charlie just thought that, Charlie did have a closer connection with German, and hey, Charlie made it to the end. So like, good on him. And he could use my vote out as part of his like, moves that he made. But it was fun to be part of a dramatic moment, part of German's villain arc.
My favorite gift of the season.
Yeah, I'm like, this will always be funny to me. I'm like, I'm not mad at it. Like, we were both like, we need this. Like, we both knew we needed it. So it was fun.
Do you know what that advantage was?
Yeah, it was a clue to get the like burn a vote. So he ultimately was able to, like, after a vote was read, he could just be like, I'm going to just take that and burn it. So like someone voted for him or one of his allies, he could get rid of that vote.
It was a clue to how to get that, or it was just the flat out advantage?
I think it was a clue to where to get it, but you'll have to confirm because I was out. But I believe that's what it was. It must have been like fairly clear where it was. I'm not quite, I don't know. But I don't think he could have used it at that tribal. I think it was a clue to where it was.
So your game isn't over. From here, you're heading to Redemption. You're joining Joe and Debbie at Redemption.
Yes. So Debbie, like, well, first of all, it was like, cool, like 3 moms, like they're really going to do that, like to us, like we're all like of the, look, I don't know. I was just kind of feeling some kind of way about it, but also respect because there were like 5 moms playing Reelfoot or something, probably an LRG record. So good on that. But yeah, I didn't love that, that was our demographic of early outs. And then also, Joe and I had our ups and downs in the game. There was some tension in terms of like, she had thought that I was not doing enough at camp. I thought maybe she was doing too much. So here we are, like with no place to to go. Like, and then also, like I said, I was really coming in with the like, we need to use these fire tokens for advantages in the game. And they were more like, like, let's have some coffee, let's get some food. And I was like, which they already, it's like, they already gave us a lot at Redemption. Like they gave us a lot of comforts, and it really shifted my mind of like how Redemption could be. So I've been on Redemption at Angelica. I've been on Redemption in other games too. So
Bloomington.
in Bloomington, I was like,
I was like, I can think of one other.
I was I was on Exile and Survival Challenge, but that's not the same. We weren't voted out. It was like, but I feel like it really, and so different redemption in games have different mindsets of like, I feel like when you watch it on the CBS, they're like, we've like made these people suffer just as much as if they were in the game, so it's even when you're coming back. But like, I don't think that that's the mindset that people should have in LRGs. Like, we're already bummed out, right? We're just sitting there being like depressed if you want. Like, it can be just like circling around, like what went wrong. And like, that's not a good vibe. So I think that it's better if games do keep the redemption people active and have something to do and some kind of hope. And, it was a long redemption. Like Debbie and Joe had 2 nights there. And ultimately, they could have had up to 10 people. Ultimately, we had 7. But I thought, which is just a long way to say, I think that Reelfoot did a great job. Frank specifically, I think the idea of like, they had a prod person who was very active in the beginning to, like engaging a lot with the players, was a smart way to go, because it kind of helps people not just spiral out. And also if there are like some tension, it's like breaks it up and gives the activity. The second day or whatever, the second day I was there, Frank had to leave, and like there were more players coming in, and there was more game talk around the players, and there was like just the dynamic shifted. But I just think that like, especially, I'm kind of talking to like LRG organizers of like having prod be not afraid to be pretty involved in the beginning of the redemption, I think is a good way to go. We all had a good experience with Frank being there. And I definitely, so I can talk openly that like after Reelfoot, I was doing production for Surviving Bloomington, which does have a redemption aspect in it every year. And I was in charge of running the redemption camp for this season. So I was in my head knowing that I was very, 2 days later, I was going to be in Bloomington running a redemption island of my own. So I was definitely, getting feedback and being thoughtful about what were the things that I thought went well about Reelfoot that I could bring to Surviving Bloomington. And so I was grateful for that and for what Frank brought to us through that. And so I'm like, okay, let me see my notes here about what we were doing.
Well, here, question for you before we continue. You're running your own Survivor game. You're like, I'm done playing. I'm hosting. I'm making it happen.
Yes.
What does your dream redemption camp scenario look like?
I think having collaborative activities and puzzles and rewards is a good way to go. I liked that we were collaboratively winning fire tokens that we could then use for reward. I thought that was good. In Angelica, we also were collaboratively they had like little games for us, and like we could pick from a roster of rewards, like bottle of wine or like a mystery box or like some trail mix, and like we would win something and then we would get to pick which thing we wanted from the list. So I do think that like something where you're bringing people together to be, connecting to each other, because we already got voted out and we've maybe feeling alone, or like we didn't get the connections we want. And like people come to this game to compete, but also to make friends. And so if you feel like, oh man, the people I thought I made friends with, maybe they're not my friends, then like get new friends. Like me and you, Stephen, we were like, I feel like that was like my favorite part of the Bloomington game was like, we were on redemption together and made friends. And like, that's what I actually, to be honest, like that's what I was telling people when I was running redemption in this past week in Bloomington. I was like, I was on redemption. I met Steven. We were like great buddies.
We had the best post-game experience ever.
Yeah. I was like, even if you don't get back in, you can find your bestie like Steven and me. So I just think that like, you kind of have to shift your mindset about like, okay, maybe the game didn't go the way that you hoped it did, but like ultimately we're still camping out with like interesting people that we wouldn't have met otherwise. So like, let's just go with that. Yes, Blake. I liked getting to know you on Redemption too. So yeah, it's like, okay, it's a different spin on a camping trip, but like here we are. But I do like that there are some puzzles and like challenges as well. So that aspect of things is important too. And we got to do some of those things at Redemption. So um, we did the Jenga game, which Debbie mentioned as one of her favorite things. That was also a highlight for me. Frank and I did like a big Jenga, like it was like as tall as us. And like, we went so hard, and like Frank and I, like, it was like, there was like 2 pieces left. It was like, this is the most serious Jenga game ever. And you know, in the end, like I won, and he's like, oh yeah, you feel so good because I didn't let you win. Like it was like, because it was hard, that's why it feels good. And I was like, that was a true thing. It was because we were both respecting the game so much and like being like, no, we're in it. That like, and also because we had the time. Like usually if you're like, okay, this Jenga is like long enough, I'm like, we have only time. So like, take our time, but the best Jenga game ever. And we did. So then we went double or nothing, and Joe lost our fire tokens. Good thing the fire tokens didn't matter. They literally didn't matter because like, but like, let's see. Yeah, I said no to Gatorade and no to coffee. I only wanted like mats or tarp. They provided us with like, each time someone got out, they would bring that person like a little snack. Like I got some nuts, and like there were carrots and apples. Also, Frank had made like, he had cut down with a machete a bunch of logs and like made a log shelter, like so we weren't sleeping on the ground. That I think is like, you know, I talked about in the beginning and even in my confessionals, like, oh, I can go without fire, I can go without whatever. But like, I was cold, and I do think that like having the logs and not sleeping on the ground made a difference. And like, so I do respect that. In past games, I don't think it would have mattered. In this game, it did matter. Like it was cold, and not sleeping on the ground helped. Yeah, so I will say that. Also, Debbie didn't mention this in her interview, but there was a moment where we talked about how hard, like, I feel like it was like how hard she was willing to go for like like, I don't know if it was for Jenga or just like in general for the game, and how she could do hard things. And she talked about like breastfeeding, and I was like, yeah, it was like freaking hard. And like, we did it, like, it was like some mom bonding was happening around like breastfeeding. And like, you know, like she talked about childbirth. I'm like, yeah, like we did that. So there was some like female empowerment going on that like wouldn't be relating. Everyone couldn't necessarily relate, but like, as Golden Girls could respect each other. Mom perspective. Yeah, so I will say, so if I can move ahead, like Jeff came,
which I mentioned to Debbie, my favorite entry of a player, where it's like, you should go back, Jeff, you don't need to be here.
I wasn't intimidated by anyone. I'm like, I was happy when people decided not to come, though. I was surprised. Yeah. So I guess before Jeff, it was like James decided not to come. And I was like, I couldn't believe that. I understood like why Danny didn't come, but I was like shocked that like a player in the game would just decide not to come. But yeah, when Jeff came, he was like upset. It was like swap. We kind of got the story. He was blindsided, and there's the shot in the dark, and like backstabbing, and like all this stuff. So he was upset. I really, respected like Jeff's heart across the whole game. Like he was very like, he wanted it bad, and you could tell, and like it was like right there on the surface. And I really appreciated that like fight, and when he was like, how it was so clear like that he wanted it. So Jeff and I did a 30-minute, like we had 30 minutes to try to make fire challenge on Redemption. And we did not make fire. But it was actually really good because Frank gave us tips after, which I think were helpful. And also, when Shauna and Blake got there, they also had a 30 minutes to make fire, and they also couldn't make fire. So, which I knew that Shauna was like a fire making queen. I had seen her Instagram where she showed everyone how to make fire. Like I had seen that on her Instagram. So I knew that she could make fire. I also can make fire, and I have shown multiple LRG people how to make fire, but it is different to make it in the elements versus like I make it at the skate park, and like, you know, it's like, it's different. So I thought it was useful to get the tips from Frank. And there continued to be some tension on redemption, and I don't need to go into it like so much, but I will say that it continued to be a factor, I think, where like Joe and I had some ups and downs. Like I was excited to just like get to talk game a little bit with Jeff, and
Mhm.
like we went off at one point to like I showed him like where the trash bag was in redemption, but then I felt like there was like bad vibes, like I wasn't supposed to like go off and have a talk with somebody.
Mhm.
That like Joe felt like it was like we were talking about her, or like that it was I was talking about them, Debbie and her. Um, where like really I was just kind of like, I feel like I've been like stuck in this one place, and I'm like, oh, here's a new person, and like let me find out what's going on, and like yeah, we can have some game talk. Like I want to know what's been going on in this other tribe. And
Mhm.
um, I feel like we had maybe like a 3-minute conversation and came back and it was like bad vibes. Like I was just
Oh,
like, okay.
I, I I felt like in Bloomington, I remember redemption's over, we go get lunch, dinner.
Mhm.
We get some, I don't know, like mid-afternoon meal, right? And it was you, me, Marcel, and you and I are just like game. Marcel's just like not having it. I'm just like, sorry, dude.
Yeah, it could be.
Yeah.
It's like
So,
different people's vibes and like what
mhm.
they're into. Um, yeah, so it kind of continued where Joe and I, although I think we had like some respect and could enjoy each other, we were also like really not in the same like mindset. And we're like I think later on we sort of processed it of like we were playing different games. Like
Yes.
also like she was, I think in general she was frustrated that she felt like she was making the fire, she was doing all this work, and that other people weren't. And I was like, well, we didn't like need you to necessarily do like I feel like it was because of her like mothering and like taking
Mhm.
that like she has to take charge of like be responsible for everyone, but like we weren't asking her to be responsible for us, but she was feeling like she needed to be doing this anyway. And it was
Mhm.
like that's not the expectation, but like she couldn't like hold herself back from just like doing all the things to take care of everyone, but then like running ragged about it.
Mhm.
um so it continued to be a little bit of an issue. um there one of the highlights though of redemption was we ultimately I was after I was it was clear that the tokens were, you know, redemption
Mhm.
tokens, we should just use them. Like the phone calls from home, Jeff and I decided we did not need to pay 2 tokens for our 60-second call, but we supported um Joe and Debbie of having those calls, and that was really powerful and like, you know, cute, but also powerful. And I think even like, I think the most powerful moment really was like when Debbie got her call and you hear this little baby voice being like, you know, hi mom, I love you or something, or like I miss you or whatever, you know, the little baby said. And then like Joe in the back is like bawling, just hearing Debbie's child. Like I think Joe had maybe had the first call, but like it was like
Mhm.
hearing Debbie's call. And it was like, oh yeah, it's like, I mean, my child is older and she's just like not like she wouldn't have had the same like it wouldn't have meant anything to her for her to hear from me. She'd been like, "What? Why are you
Your
calling
daughter's
me?"
a teenager, right?
She's 11, but like she's just,
She's getting
you
there.
know, yeah, it's like it wouldn't have been the same. But even just hearing the little kid, like there was a time when she would have been like that. So I'm like, oh, it was like a really cute moment. And I'm like not really usually very emotionally connected to the like family
Mhm.
visits on Survivor, but like it was like a really sweet thing to like be there for that, and also to see how Joe was reacting to Debbie. Like it was like Debbie's family thing. It was really cute. I'm glad that they had that. Um, yeah, it was sweet. Um, we also another challenge that we did on Redemption that we failed at was like where you have the circle and you have like the ropes coming out from the sides and you're holding the rope with
Yeah.
tension and you have to put the blocks up. And we had to guess how long it would take us 3 minutes, 5 minutes, 10 minutes. We did not win that. Like whatever we said, we were not close. Like, um, and Blake came as we were, I think, like as we were doing it, as we were
Mhm.
failing at it. And um, yeah, so then we were, I would, anytime someone came, I was like excited to get all the tea. I also had like really was interested in meeting Blake. I felt like Blake would like give little looks every time he was like on the challenge mat and stuff. And I'm like, who is this cutie? And like, let's be friends. But like, we didn't meet until redemption. So that was, and so like Blake came and sat down in the shelter, and like Jeff and I were trying to get the scoop. And then there was like sort of another moment of tension where Joe wanted us to make fire and was like tired and was like asking for help. And like, they were tired because they had been like working so hard. Right. Like I'm sympathetic to this, but also I was like, it was a little bit of like not reading the room of like, Blake just got here and is like telling us the story and like feeling emotional. And so I was just kind of like, don't tell us like what to do. And then I was like, oof. Like, so
I'm hearing when it's Reelfoot rivals, it'll be you and Joe together.
Oh God. But like, I have a lot of love and respect for Joe. But like, we just didn't do well together on like in certain moments. So in that moment, and then like I was just trying to be like, we're doing something else right now. It has to be okay. And then like Joe was like, I do everything. Like, yeah, I do everything. I'm tired. Like, you guys aren't helping. I think she said I was playing an online game. And I was like, I've never played an online game. I don't know what you mean. But like, at the same time, I was like sympathetic to like, she is tired. I'm tired too. We're all tired. Like, I wouldn't necessarily have like been like snappy either. Like, I'm sorry, Joe. Like, but it was a thing. Like, and then I did like sort of take Jeff and I had a moment of like little processing after like, okay. But I understand that it was like Joe's way of like taking care of people was by doing the work. And also she needed to understand that she didn't need to take care of us as much as she was. So that was a thing. Then Frank came and he brought the rattlesnake and we cooked the rattlesnake over the fire. And I didn't eat rattlesnake as I am vegan, as we have previously discussed. But I do think if people are going to eat meat, they might as well eat meat from like animals that were living in the wild that they then killed. So, you know, I'm kind of glad that everyone had that experience, that wanted to have the experience. It seems like everyone on Redemption enjoyed having the rattlesnake, other than Joe, who was not did not like it. But I think that she probably liked that she got to try it and then was like, no. Frank also brought like music and light for us. They did a like another like very easy kind of challenge where they're like, how much does this chair cost? If you guess it within $5, you get to keep it. Only we each got to guess within $5, like 5 up or down. So they made it very easy for us to win everything.
Because it wasn't a secret vote. It was all like, I'll do 5, 10, 15, 20,
exactly,
25, 30.
Exactly, yes. Only people did not know how much a sleeping bag was. And I tried to tell them that it was going to be more. And then like Frank was like, this is a really nice sleeping bag. It has like, I forget what it was. Like it's a twin and it's like very fancy. And I was like, Frank does not have a $15 sleeping bag, people. Like he really does not. First of all, for $15, you would get it off of like your neighborhood, like yard sale list. Okay. This is not the sleeping bag that Frank would have. But I think we did not win the sleeping bag, but we could then buy it with the fire token. So like whatever. And Frank and I had a nice talk about LRGs and he was lovely. We also had a disposable camera at Redemption, which is fun. I think that that's a good idea for LRGs in general.
I love that. I'm tempted in the future if like you have like trying to bring a disposable camera, but then like I'd rather sleep.
It was cute. So, like I took some pictures of like people eating rattlesnake, whatever. Yeah, so we got a camping chair. There's a sleeping bag. There was some food. There was this giant orange puffy chair that actually it was Joe's, I think, personal like thing. So she was like, I bought that. I know how much it was. And yeah, and then there was the sleeping bag I was excited about, but in the end, and Debbie sort of talked about it, but like it was really Debbie, Jeff, and Blake that shared the sleeping bag, and I was on the end, and I really didn't have any, and I was still frozen that night. And Joe, who was mad at us, like told us it was an individual game, and she was not going to share the mat or like the tarp that she had because she had won it the day before, and that's what she was keeping. So she had her own thing. Then the 3 other people shared it, and I was on the end, and I was cold, and like Joe was probably glad that I was cold. I woke up in the middle of the night and worked in the fire. They didn't know that. They were sleeping. But yeah, so that was a thing. And then in the morning, Joe had got up and made fire, and which was very nice because it was cold. But then she was tired and mad about it and was like looking for something of hers that she couldn't find. And so she woke everybody up. She actually, like, they weren't waking up fast enough. And so she said she was going to, if they didn't get up and move for her to look for her thing, then she was going to pour water on the fire and quit. So I woke the people up so that she could look for the thing that I don't think she ever found. But I love you, Joe. You were an important part of my experience on Reelfoot. Like, I'm sure that I drove you crazy. Like, I'm sorry. So we had adventure. Then she stayed. It was fine. We had a puzzle. Stan came. There was a puzzle. The game is afoot. Reelfoot, that is, was the phrase. So people snuck us coffee and donuts. There snacks for each new person. And let's see, we found out the 3rd person that was voted out was still not coming, and we sort of speculated on who we thought that might be. We're like,
because Shauna has joined you at this point, then, right?
Well, I think before Shauna, it was maybe Jordan was out.
It went Blake, Shauna, Jordan, Matthew.
Okay. All right. Well, we were surprised that there was a person who did not come.
Mm-hmm.
I
so
think
day
that
5, and you're feeling the merge coming.
Debbie guessed Jordan, which I was like, no way, Jordan would come. But I thought maybe German, because I had remembered German was like feeling, it felt like he was fatigued or tired or something at the beginning of the game. So I was like, maybe German. But it was Jordan, and I'm sure she'll tell you the story. I'm not sure what it was. Shauna came. I was excited to meet Shauna. She had great energy. Like, I knew that she had won her game. She tried to make fire with Blake, but they didn't succeed. She brought like some edible flowers for us, but didn't know that we'd already been taken care of. So well on Reelfoot, we're like, oh, but we have like actual food that they're bringing us, so it's fine. People like took naps and like had snacks. We did the superlatives game, but it was all, and which I was like, oh no, not this game, like where it's a lot of times it's a negative thing, but it was not negative. And it was also very clearly had been thoughtful, and like they picked things specifically for like us. Like I'm sure Frank like came up with categories that like fit different people. Like I would like best twerker, and it was like, okay, well, we had seen Blake twerk, they hadn't seen me twerk. Okay, I have, I am a pole dancer, I have like taken some classes, but I was like, I can't compete with Blake, we'll be real.
You held back a little too much at the start of the game. You really could have made a splash if you just showed off your pole dancing skills from like day 1, I think.
Like, excuse me, they would have put me in the Sexy 6 Alliance. Like, so many things. I think I got like wood collector, which is just evidence that I do some things at camp. Okay. Like, dirtiest camper was one of them. I was like, there's no way I'm not getting this, but we all sort of like thought it was ourselves. It's like we're all so dirty. Yeah, so that they did a good job with making a superlatives that was like positive, and we all got something, and like that was good. But notably, Jeff got all 13 superlatives right. Like when we guessed them, he got 13 out of 13. So that's some social player for you. I know, it's very impressive. Like, so Maddie P came like 1 hour before the challenge. Like he barely got oriented at all. One of the smartest things that they did for redemption, they told us that we would, if we cleaned up our camp and carried everything back to the barn, they would give us 3 fire tokens. It was like, we're like, okay. I was like, every game should do this. Like, get your redemption people to carry everything back. Like, we don't like, it was great. Yeah, and we did our confessionals, and we had the battle back.
So before we get to the battle back,
okay.
What's interesting about this redemption tribe is that it's a lot of original pink and you and Joe from Original Grain. And partially, two of the players that are voted up from your tribe, Danny and Jordan, declined to then go to Redemption. But you're not seeing anyone from your tribe join you. Like, do you feel like at this point you have I guess I'll start with the first one. What is your read of the game at this point?
It was hard to follow all the different swaps and stuff because the swaps happened right after. So I could like barely keep track of it. But like various people would come and be like, Kira swapped or like Carl swapped and like backstab me. So like I could kind of hear like different people were mad at different people. But it was a little bit tricky to like follow all the ins and outs of what was happening. But I knew that like I would go back and try to work with Melissa and Tony. I was pretty sure that I think by this point I knew that it was Charlie. Like I'd heard like, oh, Charlie pretended that it was a mistake, that like he voted the wrong way, but like I did not believe that. And then it was like later confirmed from other people that like that wasn't the case. But yeah, I would have, if I had gone back in, I would have tried to work with those original people. But also I knew that like for a while I was like, well, I would try to work with Jordan while she was still in. But then like also I had a connection with Sandra that I would have tried to leverage as well, even though we'd never played together before. I felt like that was a thing. And then also that if there were going to be two people going back in, I felt good about working with any of the people that were on Redemption. Although ultimately one of the things that did come into play was that I knew that Jeff wanted to work with Hannah, and that he was like, I would never write her name down. And like, he wanted to get in and be like ride or die with Hannah. And I knew that Hannah was the reason that German was safe. This was my perception, was that Hannah saved German. Which again, it could be that there were other people also doing that, but like, I feel like Hannah really advocated for German. And so ultimately when it came to the Redemption twist where we had to vote who we wanted to go back in, I didn't vote for Jeff, even though I really like and respect Jeff and saw how much he wanted it. I knew that if I got in and Jeff got in, that Jeff's alliance would be with Hannah and not with me. So that was a factor in me not voting him to go to fire making.
Well, so talking about,
sorry, I skipped ahead, but
no, it's okay. There's a question to ask. I'm going to wait till the very end. Talking about the Redemption challenges. It's 3 rounds. The first round is an endurance balance challenge.
Yes.
Talk me through this.
Yes. So this was like the highlight for me. This was my big victory moment.
This is what I expected.
I'm like, I won an endurance comp. I felt very good about that.
You almost won our individual endurance comp in Bloomington. You came second, I think, for our tribe.
Yes, even though it was then said that they needed to get me out because I was weak. So yes, I sometimes can do some of the challenges, and when I do, it feels really good. And so I was really proud of myself for that endurance comp. And they told us it was going to be one man and one woman that would get back in. And I thought that the first one would be endurance. The second one would be a puzzle potentially. And I think I always thought that fire making was going to be the third part. But I knew that if it was a puzzle in the second part, I really wanted to win the endurance because I didn't think I had much of a chance with the puzzle. But
you're good at puzzles, though.
If it's a puzzle, I know. If it's
fair. I mean, it is neither day if you know a puzzle or not.
I mean, I'll do my work to try to learn the puzzles that might come up, but like, yeah, that's not really the way that the Reelfoot puzzles are. So, anyway, I was really happy with the endurance. I worked hard. I was like using all my different tricks for focusing, and it's also different to do a challenge when you know it's like, if this is it, as opposed to like, okay, I'm like trying to do something in the game proper, but like if I'm out, like, oh well, I'll just like rely on my social my social stuff. This was like, you need to win this, and so it really helped me like push as much as I can. And now ultimately, people ask me what I thought about like the whole like the gender split of it all, but like I think that I mean, I don't think I would have beat Maddie and Jeff in this challenge in endurance. Like I could have gone further than I did. I could have gone longer. But I don't think I went for like 20 minutes until Shauna went out, but like they went for an hour. So it was, significantly further. It was very powerful to watch. I'm always inspired by people like the digging deep of it all.
Mm-hmm.
Jeff and Maddie both gave it everything. I mean, for me, like I was pushing hard. Like when I got off, it was like my leg didn't work the way that it was supposed to. Like I sort of like went onto the ground, like, okay, I can't move my leg. So like the fact that they did it like so much longer. And Jeff had all sorts of different like movements and positions and strategy. Also, there was a little bit of drama in the beginning of that challenge where like they said that Jeff had like touched his side or something and he wasn't allowed to. And he was like, check the tape. And they like had to go back and look. And he really advocated for himself because he knew he hadn't done it. And I respected that because I feel like I would have just been like, okay, I guess I'm out. That sucks. But like he was like wanted it so bad. And I respected that he was like, advocated for himself like that. But it's just really powerful. Like I think about it in Bloomington, like how Nina fought so hard in the battle back as well. And just like, it's like, those are moments that I will take forward in my future games to be like, remember how, how hard Jeff fought, or like Tony, when he was doing a tension thing, like how you could see how hard it was and how they wanted to push just a little bit further. Like those are moments that I'll remember of like what people can put themselves through and what they're able to accomplish. So I was happy for Maddie. I was also like, I'm impressed by Jeff. So after that, then it was a social challenge, not a puzzle. Just
a puzzle of its own.
I thought that it was pretty clear that Shauna was going to get back in for this. And I was also very sure that it was going to be a fire making. They had put like the concrete blocks out and I was like, this is where we're going to be making fire. But also because they had stressed fire so much at Redemption, I was just like, it's going to be fire. And ultimately, like I said, I voted for Blake, who I thought would have been very fun to have back in. But also, like I said, it was mostly because I think Jeff wouldn't have been good for my game if I got back in. Even though Jeff and I could have worked together, he ultimately would have always been more loyal to Hannah. So it would have been harder for me to trust him. There was a moment also when Joe, like she's sitting next to me and she's like, who do you want to go against? And I was like, well, I'm voting for you to come back in. I voted for Joe to come back in because I thought it would mean like it would be meaningful to her. And also because I wanted to help our original tribe. But really part of it was like, I just thought that it might be meaningful for her to like get a vote. But I ultimately didn't think that she was going to get back in. But she was like, no, but who do you want to go against? Like she was asking me who she should vote for. And I said, Deb. And then she went ahead and voted Shauna. So I'm like, why did you even ask me? Just to be like, fuck you, Melanie. You want to go against Debbie, so I'm voting for Shauna. Like later on, she said, that's not why. Like, you'll have to get the story from her. It's just like, okay.
So why was Shauna such a shoo-in? Why was ever? Because I know Debbie said she voted for like.
I mean, I think that she was fighting hard, and also like you said it was people from her tribe. Like I think that they maybe like Shauna probably had a better chance of going back in and like mixing things up. I mean, ultimately she just got back out, but it was
took an idol.
I was like, there was like 2 idols, I think. Like I don't know. Yeah. So I think that she was really advocating and gaming at that point. But yeah, I thought that she would get back in. And I was also like, like I said, I knew that she could make fire. Even though both of us had failed to do so at Redemption, I knew that she could make fire. I knew that I could make fire. And then they told us that we had to like run around to get our components to make the fire. And I saw a piece of bark and I knew that she saw the same piece of bark. And like, when they told us to go, like we both ran for it and she got it. And I was like, yet again, I was just like right there and not close enough. I guess I need to work on my like short sprints.
You just gotta dive for it, put your body on the line. Like it's not Survivor, not bleeding.
It took me longer to find my supplies. And ultimately I was getting like more supplies than I ultimately needed. I sort of miscalculated. Like I thought it would take a bigger fire to light the torch, but it was actually like, I mean, Shauna did it so quickly, but she basically like got the spark and like a few leaves and that was it. It was up. So I like was saying, I can't even feel bad about like losing it. I feel like she won it. Like she won the fire more than I lost it. I wasn't like I was sitting there unable to like make a fire. It was like she was so quick. I do think I would have been able to make fire faster than Maddie or Blake, but what are you going to do? I couldn't, like I said, I couldn't have done the endurance as long as Maddie. So I was happy for him. And I was glad to not be like humiliated by like just not being able to make fire or something. You know, it's like if you're going to lose to fire, it's best that the person you're going against just does it like very fast. Like you can be like, oh, well. Like, so,
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, like, and she was lovely. Like, I only had a short time with her, but I did really like her a lot. I could definitely see her being cast on Survivor. Like her like wit and her like warmth and like the way that she speaks to people. Yeah, she's great. Yeah, so then I went back and you know, I saw like Jeff was upset, like he asked me like why I didn't vote for him. I think he understood, but like again, I really respect, like you could see how much he wanted it in his heart. Where I think there were other people that were like, okay, you know, I feel like I'm always a little bit relieved at the same time as being like, oh man, like I think he was like really in it. But I did enjoy getting to talk to everyone else out of the game. Having Prod House, Reelfoot, I had sort of heard, you know, I was glad to have redemption. So we had longer time in the game. Ultimately, it was like 5 days, 4 nights in the game, which is, you know, for most games, that's the whole game.
That is the whole game.
So, but I was also sad to miss out on so much of the actual game. Like we could watch the challenges. I could see how the people were getting more and more run down, more and more exhausted, more and more hungry. I was like, I wanted to be tortured like that.
Put me in.
Like, and then even after the game, you like see how they've bonded with each other further, and you're just like, oh man, I wish I could be like besties or have that inside joke or whatever. It's like, it's a little, you know, that's the part that's like saddest for me, is like the missed experiences with the people, the missed experiences of the challenges. I was really grateful. One of my favorite things about after I was out, I was going to say post game, the game was still going, but like Jeff and I would like watch the challenge and be like, okay, we're going to like go do this challenge together. And like, you know, we did the tension rod like thing. And like, we did it for like a long time. And then like multiple, you know, number of us did it, but like me and him were at the end, and like, I'm like trying to like hold on, and he'd be like encouraging me to go longer because he wanted to go longer. And like, you got this. And I was like, okay. And then I'm like trying to hold out my arms, and I'm like, I think I accidentally, like, I think I've broken the rules. Like you have to have your arm down or whatever. And like, you know, I think Josh was like, yeah, you've broken the rule like 3 times or something. I was like, yeah, but it was really fun to like get to do some of that stuff with Jeff after someone else who was like, let's play the challenges. Let's just see what we can, you know, mess around with this or that. And I also, you know, I appreciated the Prod team on Reelfoot. There were not very many people on Prod this season. Yeah. Like there was a couple people that like had to drop out right at the end. It was like a pretty bare bones group. And in this game, I feel like I got to know Prod more than like some games. It's like Prod like doesn't speak at all. And in this game, I felt like I got to know the people. And then also being out, I'm like, I feel like I got to know all the Prod people, and I appreciated them. And especially I think because I know that like I've done like this summer, this was the only game I'm playing. I have no more future games in sight. Like there's
so she says.
I'm here. I have no games in sight, except that you know, I did Surviving Bloomington Prod. I'm doing Survivor Pennsylvania Prod. Both of those games are like 5-day long games.
I look forward to seeing you laying on a bench in the back of a video for a challenge. You're like, is that Melanie?
I'm going to do Survivor New York Prod. I'm probably helping on competitive events Prod. Like I already did the Mole, New York Mole Prod this year.
I didn't realize you were in Prod for that. That's cool.
Yeah. So I'm like, I think like Prod is like, those are like some of my people at this point. Like I really, so as maybe I haven't said, like I do the LRG casting Instagram. Let's take a moment to say, if you want to play a game and you're interested, or you have friends who you think would be fun, or they're like, wow, you did that. That's so cool. Like, yes, find out about a game. Follow on Instagram, LRG_casting. I run that account. And I post any games that I find out about, I post them there, and then all the people can find out about them and apply. There's a Facebook group also, Allergy Casting. I'm not affiliated with that, although I follow that, and then I take that information and put it onto Instagram. But it's basically, my way of kind of giving back to the community and trying to make it a bigger community. Like, there needs to be more women, there need to be older people, there need to be more people of color, more people with different diverse life experiences. So my way of trying to grow the community is by running that account and also helping other games find out a bit about each other. Because a lot of times these games start with like, just, oh, I'm just going to do this for my friends and family. And then it's like, oh, I've already coursed all my family and friends into it. I need to find some other people. And then it's like, oh, there's this whole community here. So I want to like connect the games to each other and the people to the games to the people. So please do follow that and also share it. There's a whole world of it. And so I think that I've been blessed by being able to play like so many games, and it's been an important part of my life. And I'm not like, oh, I'll never play a game again. Like, I want to play. It's not because I'm done playing. I'm like, I'll play all the games. I love the game. I'm not like, oh, I'm tired out, I don't want to play anymore. It's more like I want other people to get to experience it.
Mm-hmm.
So like, let me give back by being on prod, but also like, let me make space for people. So that's like this game that I was an alternate. I'm like, yeah, if there's other people that are not connected or new people that need to play, like, that's fine. But then if you're like, oh shit, I need like a woman of a certain demographic and you just really want me to play, I'm like, I do like to play, but no more games on the Northeast. Like, no more like, short games if unless necessary. I like a long game. I like a game where I might not know all the people. Yeah. So, what else do I want to say about the after? So, okay.
Question for you. So when I played Survival Challenge,
yes,
I'm voted out pre-swap. And I proceed to watch people vote me out, walk to Final Five with each other. And the entire time I'm sitting in the bleachers going like, I missed my ticket, that could have been me. And it was just this frustrating, for me at the time, it was so frustrating. It's like, wow, if only I had done something differently, I would be in the end game. Like I just missed my bus. And for your case, you're in this like kind of toss up between you and German goes to the final, goes out in 4. Did you feel at all just like, that could have been me?
Well, definitely when I see like the pictures of like, oh, the other people I was trying to work with all like together, and I'm like, damn it, like those were the people I wanted to work with. Like, I think that like the only thing I could have done was like worked harder on getting Charlie on my side rather than on German's side. Or like, I don't know if when Hannah and German were talking to me, it was like a real pitch that they were giving or not. So I'll be interested to hear their podcast about that. To me, I didn't think it was like realistic, but like maybe that could have been a thing. But I mean, I don't sit and have regrets about it. I just have more like, I wish that I could have had more, like, I wish I could have gone further, at the same time, all the people that like went far, they really suffered, man. Like, it was like, the 3 people went to the doctors with like weird health stuff like after the game. So I'm sure you'll, like, I feel like they really went through some things. And then like we also all like have like our like new like journey of like health and like what we're changing in our lives and stuff. But like, I don't know. Mostly my regret is just like, oh, I wanted to go further to like have these experiences with you guys. But at the same time, I'm like, I had my own journey on redemption, and like I had my own fun at the prod house, and like we played games each night. Like, I was also really thankful that like, O'Rear led some like minis. Like, I won the Squid Games mini. Okay. Like, did some really hardcore paper, scissors, rock in the end, and so we had our own memories from that. And I do think that they did a good job of, taking care of us after the game. It was something that I had heard like some mixed results of, like some mixed feedback about like what happens when you're out at Reelfoot, like the jury not being able to engage. And I think that they softened some of that this year. And I think that was a positive shift. And it was something that I had thought about in going into the game of just like trying to mentally prepare for like, if I'm out early, I might have a long time of just like sitting in this house and either with my phone or without my phone, not being able to talk to people. And I think that they were right to soften it a little bit, and that people did have like a pretty decent time, even if we were out. And even to the point of letting the jury play one of the games with us one of the nights. Like, I think in the past they wouldn't have even done that, but it was like the jury was kind of like, come on, let us play. Like, and ultimately people use their persuasive powers, found the right person to talk to, and like was able to make it happen. Which was good. We needed that. It was hard to like see the jury be in the house and like both be like jealous of them, but also feel bad because they were like off in their own house, but like, or in their own room. But like, I just wanted to like talk to people. So it was a little tricky part. And I think I was thinking about like what made it like harder. And I guess it's just that it's longer. Like usually in a game, it's like pretty short lived. I mean, Stephen, you and I had this experience in Bloomington where it was like, well, we listen to the jury, but we can't talk to them. Like in Reelfoot, we weren't even really, we could a little bit listen.
Yeah.
But I think that the fact that it was longer, there were more days of it. So I don't know. It's just always going to be a thing, I think.
Yeah, because like, so when I played, I was voted day 7, and it was blood versus water. So like my friend Katarina was there, and I'm like, hi, we can't really talk. So it was like we exchanged brief words, but we really gonna have a conversation until once the game really wrapped up.
Yeah. Yeah, it's awkward, and it's also like, oh, like I just want to like talk to these people and have more of this experience. And we're like, okay, I guess we can't. Like, I'm like looking at my notes to see if I had other things that I wanted to say, but yeah, I think overall the post game was good for me. I appreciated all of Prod, getting to know them, appreciating I think also just because I knew that I was gearing up to do Prod, and I'm like, Prod is exhausting. Like, it's tiring. And when you're in a game, it's like all about you and what you're doing, and like you're fighting for yourself. When you're doing Prod, it's all about these other people and giving these other people this experience, and like sometimes being invisible or really not giving any of your feedback. And like, so it's like a totally different kind of energy, which is why I was just always very thankful of like what they were all doing. Like some of my favorite moments were like, yeah, like playing that game that O'Rear was leading, or like having fun with Stan, the doctor, like giving him little tidbits of what was going on, and like playing games with him after, like all of that. So it was good times.
Anything else that you want to bring up that we haven't had a chance to talk about?
Just that everyone should follow LRG Casting, and also they should all like listen to all of your podcasts. That there are podcasts about a bunch of different games, and yeah, some of the players they didn't know, and I'm like, come on, you don't know about these podcasts? It's so good.
There's like 40 to 60 hours of content you can binge now that you're done with the game.
Not just Reelfoot, the Bloomington content. There's Angelica Parker does. There's like it really enhances the LRG experience and community. So, and also I told people about the wiki pages that you
which I still need to build the current season, so I'm remiss on that.
Yeah, I just would encourage people to play, and then also to get involved. And I'm grateful for all of the people that I met. One of the good things about Redemption, although there were people in the game that I never really got to meet, I feel like I got to meet a lot more people because I was, even though I was out early, I still got to meet a lot of the people from the other tribes.
You kind of touched on this, looking back at that fourth tribal council, and kind of like what you could have done or things you could have done differently. You said, well, maybe I need to work on Charlie more. Maybe I would change how I had that initial pitch to him. Or maybe the answer was I should have trusted Germany hand that the Charlie was a real plan. Is there anything else that round or earlier that you think could have done different to change things?
I mean, I'm curious to when the Alliance of 6 formed, because ultimately that's what I needed to be in. I needed to be in an alliance, and I wanted the alliance of the 5 who stayed in the lightning storm. So I could have done more to make that a real thing. Like I told people that I wanted it to be real, and I don't know if I was too late, or if maybe it was Charlie who made the 6. Like I'm not sure. But I think that ultimately how you do well in these games is have an alliance.
Yes.
So I had people I wanted to work with, and I had what I wanted to be an alliance, but we didn't like confirm it fast enough to be a real thing. And part of that was that like it was so early, I didn't want to be seeming too super
Hmm.
gamey when someone else said like, so Final Five, I could have been like, this is it. I'm like super serious about this five, but it was like the first night, right?
Yeah.
Um, so even though those were the people that I was like most excited about, um, and I would have like locked that down. I didn't see the other alliance like all getting together and making this happen. Um, yeah, the thing I needed to do different was to be in that alliance. Like, and that means like knowing when they were talking
Yeah.
and trying to be there for it. Because I don't think I was left out because people didn't think that they could work with me. It was probably just like a matter of who was around and like, okay, that's the numbers. Like, okay, cool. Which is why I think I still had hope, like why I still had people fighting for me. Like,
Hmm.
I think that Tony and Melissa would have, like, in a swap situation, I think I would have been okay as long as I had some of these people.
Hmm.
It was like I just needed to make it another round. But what are you gonna do?
Much like Bloomington, you chose not to play Shot in the Dark in your final tribal council. Talk me through, was there any temptation to play, or just like, no, like I know my vote matters and I know I need to play it. I'm not going to leave it up to a 1 in 8 shot.
Yeah, well, the 1 in 8 shots is not good odds, but also like I said, I had Tony and Melissa, um, like being very convincing, and ultimately they thought they were telling me the truth, so they
Hmm.
weren't lying to me that I was going to be safe. So I believed them, and they were telling me the truth, except for the fact that they didn't know that Charlie was going to flip.
Hmm.
Um, so no, I mean, I I don't have any regrets about not playing the Shot in the Dark. Like that, I feel like the right move was to try to go ahead with my people and trust them. Um, what I needed to do was to get Charlie to not, not be flipping flapping. Like, but good on him. He was a sneaky one. Like,
So as we
yeah.
wrap up, I have some rapid fire questions that throw your way.
Okay.
I'll start with, who surprised you the most out there?
I think like Tony like walked in like wearing this like beer shirt and just being like some like, not that like I think he just sort of like your initial like take on him is like he's like a bro or something, and
Hmm.
like um and so then I was just pleasantly able to like connect with him and feel good about him. Um and then Charlie also, because I think not just to me, but to multiple people, I think Charlie was like a little sneaky sneak. And like, that's not a game I can play, but like, I respect it in other people. So, um, good on him.
Who's
Yeah.
who's one person you wish you had a chance to play with but didn't?
Jordan, like, that would have been fun to connect with her.
Reelfoot's having a returnee season. What's one player from your season besides yourself you'd like to see come back for a second shot?
That's a hard one. I mean, some of them, it's like, that they're already going to get there. So it's like, I'm like,
You say that, but you don't know that.
um, I would say Jeff, because Jeff and I
Mhm.
were the gone too soon superlatives at the end. And like, I really enjoyed Jeff in a way that like, yeah, like like, I feel like Jeff was like emotional in like certain ways of just like how bad he wanted it and how you could see and feel how bad
Mhm.
he wanted it. But then also like, he's like the muscle guy, right? He's into the challenges and stuff. And in my regular life, I don't have many like connections with just like the muscle guy people. And like, I enjoy, I enjoyed like doing the challenges with him and being like, yeah, like maybe I can be sporty with you. So he wanted it bad, and he didn't get to go as far as he wanted. So I wish him well.
What was your favorite challenge? I didn't think I know the answer to this, but I'll ask anyways.
Yeah, well, I mean, I like the one that I won. So the endurance, that felt really good to me. And like I said, I think that they did a lot of like neat challenges, and congratulations to Nate on all the challenges that he put together. I liked, as I said, that a lot of the reward ones we were all able to do it together. Um, I mean, in general, one of my favorite challenges is that tension one. So I didn't get to play it, but I like that. I think it's an endurance one that like a lot of different people have a chance to win.
What's a favorite moment at camp that maybe we hadn't talked about?
I knew you were gonna like ask that, but I did give like some of my favorite moments
You
already.
gave all the good ones.
But there was a moment that this is like such a silly little moment, but like so Joe had some kind of like powder that was sort of like a dry shampoo kind of powder that like on Redemption she like gave to people to like put in their hair. I think it was actually like a foot powder maybe or something, or it was like a talcum powder. I don't know. It was like some kind of powder that she had. And so different people were like, oh, okay, I'll put it in my hair. And like, so Jeff took some and he put it in his hair, only his hair is very dark. And so it just like was like a white spot that like he then we'll be like, you know, he can't see it, but it was like kind of ridiculous. Like we had to be like, keep rubbing it in, Jeff. Nope, keep going. And he had to like rub it for quite some time before it looked like sort of normal. But like he didn't even know. I mean, it was just a silly moment of like, okay, let's he had like a white patch in his hair for a minute.
Having done 39 days of LRGs, would you prefer high heat or cold temperatures?
Surprisingly high heat. I think I would have told you beforehand, like that I was afraid of the heat, but to be honest, the worst heat happened after I was out of the game. Like I think that like that it got hotter as the week went on. And in the daytime it was hot, but like not as hot. But the cold at night, I just want to underscore. It was like I've played a lot of games. It was really rough. The sleeping situation was really rough to the point where afterwards I was like asking the other players, like, do you think it was like necessary to the experience that we had to like suffer without any bags or like any sleeping bags or anything? Like, do you think that that was like part of like what makes you know, like you proud of the game or whatever? And they did seem to say like, yes, but I think that they could have on day 2 had more rewards for blanket. Have people suffer one night, maybe 2. But like at my outpost, they should have had comfort items there that I could have bought, or like the other tribe never had a chance to get another tarp. Like I just if it had been our camp, I don't know, we couldn't have existed with one tarp. I just really don't think we could have done it with all that mud. So I think that like they could have had ways to hook us up so that like the suffering of the sleeping was a little bit less. Like, I don't know. Proud, you can do a poll of players to see what they think about that. But like maybe just have people suffer 1 or 2 nights instead of 7. I think that people continued to be cold every night. I don't know.
You played Reelfoot, you played Bloomington. I don't know if you've played other seasons that feature the shot in the dark. Love it or leave it as a twist?
Oh, I like it. I think it made us have to like be sneakier. You know, you have to have the fake plan and the, you know, all that. I like it. It gives, you know, sometimes it works out too. So yeah, I like.
Do we have any dramatic shot in the dark plays this season? I don't think so. Wasn't like the previous year where they had some really good. We had some wild hits early on. You're like, whoa.
Yeah, I think I can't speak to it. I can't speak with authority. I feel like it could have been some shot in the dark stuff that happened, but I'll leave it to other people because the pieces of like what I got from the game when I was on Redemption is not as crystal clear.
Yeah.
And also I get my games mixed up, you know, there could have been.
you don't have tabulated Excel spreadsheets for every single game.
You know, like,
this is the real reason why I make wikis, so at least I can always say like somewhere I've at least recorded what happened.
Yes. But yeah, no, I like shot in the dark.
You can go back in time and tell yourself one thing prior to playing Reelfoot. What would it be?
I mean, I don't know that I could have brought like warmer clothes, but I brought all the gear that they said to bring, and that was fine. And I think that was the biggest challenge. Though, I mean, the only other thing is like, it's this fine line of like needing to have your alliance but not play too much. Like I was definitely afraid of gaming too much, but I mean, honestly, I feel fine about my game. I mean, yeah, eh, maybe if I had somehow gotten on Joe's better side,
Mhm.
then it could have helped me. Like, I do think anytime your name is out and written down, even if only by the one person who goes home, like, I do think that that, like, puts it out there to the world that your name is a name that people can say.
Mhm.
So I do think that that hurt me, but I'm not sure how much. I don't know. Bribe Charlie even more. Like,
There you
somehow,
go.
like really buddy up with Charlie is what I needed to do. Like,
Charlie, I have all these fire tokens for some reason. They can be yours.
like, I mean, we tried. We talked a little bit, but we just didn't. I guess we just didn't get deep enough. So my, I would just say get buddy up with Charlie. Like,
Well, Melanie, I think that's all I have. Any last things you want to bring up or talk about or shout out?
I just I'm grateful for these podcasts, Stephen. I told all the, the castmates about how these exist and that you were probably going to do our interviews, and everyone was excited about it. And like, they're like, whoa, like, okay. So I really is a gift to the community, what you do, both like the wiki, all the podcasts, the stuff you do behind the scenes. I really appreciate it. I've enjoyed it. I am a #1 fan of the podcasts, and yeah, so I am grateful to all of the Reelfoot production, but also to you, Stephen. So thank you.
Well, Melanie, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me. I really loved hearing the season, your experience. For all those who are tuning in, thank you so much for taking the time to listen. Check out the Live Rally Game Instagram page. Please give it a follow. This is the second of many Survivor Reelfoot, the Decennium deep dives. More to come next week. I have some scheduling with some people I need to do, but I know for sure. I think next Wednesday, 6:30 a.m. I'll be on with Maddie, with Maddie, the winner. It'll be early in America. It'll be late in Australia. It will be a party. So
I do want to say congratulations to Maddie. He played a great
yeah.
game. We didn't have much time in the game, but I'm really happy for him.
Well, take care, everyone, and have a good rest of your evening.